Mason Reed never imagined that pulling a bleeding stranger from a wrecked SUV on a rain-soaked Chicago street would destroy everything he'd carefully built as a widowed father. The woman wasn't just injured, she was Serena Vale, the billionaire CEO whose face dominated every business magazine in America, and she was running from people who wanted her dead. One impulsive decision to shelter her for a single night would drag Mason and his 6-year-old daughter into a world of corporate warfare, paparazzi scandals, and genuine danger. But the real threat wasn't the enemies hunting Serena. It was the terrifying possibility that Mason might actually fall in love again. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city name so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The pharmacy was closing in 7 minutes. Mason Reed sat in his beat-up Honda Civic outside the 24-hour Walgreens on the south side of Chicago, engine idling, watching the rain hammer against his windshield while he checked his bank account one more time. The prescription would cost $83. His checking account showed $89. $6 for groceries until Friday. He locked his phone and stepped out into the downpour. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, while a tired pharmacist with braids and kind eyes processed his daughter's antibiotics. Mason signed the credit card slip and tried not to think about how Emma's fever had spiked to 103 that afternoon, or how he'd had to leave her with Mrs. Chen from downstairs while he made this run, or how his daughter had looked at him with those big, trusting eyes and whispered, "You'll be back soon, right, Daddy?" Mr. Reed? The pharmacist slid the white paper bag across the counter. "Make sure she finishes the whole course, even after the fever breaks." "I will, thank you." The rain hadn't let up. Mason sprinted to his car, prescription clutched against his chest, and pulled back onto the empty streets. It was almost 11 at night. Emma would be asleep by now, curled up in Mrs. Chen's guest bedroom with her stuffed elephant, the one Claire had bought for her 5th birthday before everything fell apart. Mason didn't let himself think about Claire often. 3 years wasn't long enough to forget, but it was long enough to learn how to function through the grief. Mostly. He turned onto Harrison Boulevard, a dark stretch of industrial warehouses and abandoned lots that he normally avoided, but tonight it cut 10 minutes off the drive. The streetlights here were broken or missing entirely. His headlights carved weak tunnels through the rain. That's when he saw the brake lights. They appeared suddenly, 2 red eyes blazing through the storm, followed by the sickening shriek of rubber on wet asphalt. Mason's breath caught. The vehicle was swerving, spinning, completely out of control. A massive black SUV fishtailed across both lanes before slamming sideways into a concrete utility pole with a sound like a building collapsing. Then silence. Just rain. Mason's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed at him to keep driving. Don't get involved. Don't stop. Get home to Emma. But his foot was already hitting the brake. He pulled over 30 yards from the wreck and grabbed his phone. No signal. Of course. This part of the city was a dead zone. He'd have to drive another mile to get reception. Through his rain-streaked windshield, Mason could see the SUV's front end crumpled against the pole, steam rising from the hood. The driver's side window was shattered. Nobody was moving inside. "Damn it," Mason whispered. He shoved his door open and ran. The rain was relentless, soaking through his jacket in seconds. Mason reached the SUV and peered through the broken window. The driver was slumped over the steering wheel, face turned away, long dark hair obscuring their features. Blood trickled down the side of their head. "Hey!" Mason yanked the door open. "Can you hear me?" The driver stirred. A woman. She turned her face toward him, and Mason's breath stopped. Even through the blood and rain, he recognized her. Serena Vale. Her face had been on the cover of Forbes 3 months ago. Time magazine had called her the youngest self-made billionaire CEO in America. Mason had seen her interviewed on late-night news segments while feeding Emma dinner, talking about tech innovation and corporate responsibility in that cool, controlled voice that made her sound like she'd never lost her composure once in her entire life. And now she was bleeding in a crashed SUV on the worst street in Chicago. "Don't!" Serena's voice came out raspy, desperate. Her hand shot out and gripped Mason's wrist with surprising strength. "Don't call the police." "You need an ambulance. You're hurt." "No." Her eyes locked onto his, and Mason saw something that didn't match the poised CEO from the magazines. Terror. "Please, They'll find me. If you call anyone, they'll find me. Who will find you? Please. Her grip tightened. I can't go to a hospital. I can't. Mason glanced back toward his car where Emma's medicine sat in the passenger seat, then back at this bleeding stranger who probably had a dozen people she could call for help. Rich people always had people. I have to get home, Mason said. My daughter's sick. I can't. Then just leave me. Serena released his wrist and slumped back against the seat. Go. I'm sorry. Just go. She closed her eyes. Mason stood there in the rain for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then he cursed under his breath and reached across her to unbuckle the seatbelt. What are you doing? Serena's eyes snapped open. Something really stupid. Mason slid one arm behind her shoulders, the other under her knees. Can you walk? I think so. My head. Save it. Come on, sect. He half carried her to his car while she leaned heavily against him, one hand pressed to the gash on her temple. Her expensive clothes, what looked like a designer suit now ruined by blood and rain, stood in sharp contrast to his 10-year-old Honda. Mason deposited her in the passenger seat, grabbed the prescription bag, and ran back to the SUV. He needed to check if anyone else was inside. The back seats were empty except for a leather briefcase and a shattered phone. Mason grabbed both, then noticed something else. Fresh bullet holes in the rear window. His stomach dropped. He sprinted back to his car, threw himself into the driver's seat, and gunned the engine. What were you doing out here? Mason's voice came out harder than he intended. Who shot at you? Serena didn't answer. She was staring at the prescription bag in his lap. Your daughter, she said quietly. How old is she? 6. And don't change the subject. I wasn't changing the subject. I was just... Serena winced and touched her head again. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. You should have left me there. Yeah, probably. They drove in silence for 2 minutes before Mason's phone buzzed. Signal was back. He should call the police. Report the crash. Let professionals handle whatever mess this woman was running from. But when he glanced over, Serena was watching him with an expression that reminded him uncomfortably of how Emma looked when she was scared. Where are you taking me? Serena asked. I don't know yet. That was a lie. He was already turning toward his apartment, which was the worst idea he'd had in years. Bringing a stranger home. Bringing a billionaire home. Bringing someone who'd been shot at home. With his daughter upstairs. But he couldn't think of another option. Mason's apartment building was a narrow brick structure in a neighborhood that optimistically called itself transitioning. The elevator was broken again, so he helped Serena up 3 flights of stairs while she tried not to bleed on the railing. Mrs. Chen's door was closed, which meant Emma was still asleep next door. Good. Mason unlocked his apartment and flipped on the lights. Serena stood in the doorway, taking in the cramped living room with its sagging couch, the small kitchen with dishes still in the sink, the toys scattered across the floor. Mason saw his home through her eyes and felt a flash of defensive anger. It's not much, he said flatly. It's fine. Serena stepped inside, and her heel caught on one of Emma's toy trucks. She stumbled. Mason caught her elbow. Sit. He guided her to the couch. I'll get the first aid kit. When he returned from the bathroom, Serena had removed her ruined jacket and was staring at her hands. They were shaking. Mason knelt in front of her and examined the cut on her temple. Not as bad as it looked. Head wounds always bled dramatically. He cleaned it carefully with antiseptic while Serena sat perfectly still, barely flinching. You should still see a doctor, Mason said. I can't. Because of whoever was shooting at you. Serena's jaw tightened. Yes. Are they going to come looking for you here? I don't know, probably not. They think... She stopped. They think I'm still in the car. Mason applied a butterfly bandage to her temple. So what's the plan? You hide out in my apartment until what exactly? Until I figure out who I can trust. Serena finally met his eyes. I know how this sounds. I know you think I'm insane, you're right, but I swear I'm not dangerous. I'm just... Her voice cracked slightly. I'm in trouble, and I don't know who else to ask for help. You're a billionaire. You probably have an entire security team. I did. One of them tried to kill me tonight. The words hung in the air between them. Mason sat back on his heels. Jesus. I'm sorry. Serena looked away. You should call the police. You should turn me in. I shouldn't have asked you to stop apologizing. Mason stood and ran a hand through his wet hair. Just stop. You're here now. We'll figure it out in the morning. We? Don't read into it. I'm just saying you can stay tonight. On the couch. Tomorrow you're someone else's problem. For the first time since the crash, something that might have been relief crossed Serena's face. Thank you. Mason grabbed a blanket from the hallway closet and tossed it to her. Bathroom's down the hall. Don't touch anything in Emma's room. And if Mrs. Chen knocks, you hide. Who's Mrs. Chen? My neighbor. She's watching my daughter. The one with the fever. Mason paused. He'd almost forgotten about the medicine. Yeah, I need to go get her, actually. Now? It's almost midnight. She's supposed to take the antibiotics before bed. Mason grabbed his keys. Stay here. Don't answer the door. Don't make noise. I'll be back in 10 minutes. He left before Serena could respond. Mrs. Chen answered on the second knock, wearing a bathrobe and a concerned expression. She's asleep, Mason. The fever broke about an hour ago. Relief flooded through him. Really? Really. Let her rest. You can get her in the morning. Are you sure? I don't want to ease. Mason? Mrs. Chen gave him the look she usually reserved for when he tried to refuse her homemade soup. Go to bed. You look terrible. He managed a tired smile. Thanks, Mrs. Chen. Back in his apartment, Serena was exactly where he'd left her, sitting on the couch with the blanket pulled around her shoulders. She looked smaller somehow, less like the confident CEO from magazine covers, and more like someone who'd barely survived the worst night of her life. Your daughter? Serena asked. Fever broke. She's staying next door tonight. Mason collapsed into the armchair across from her. You hungry? I'm fine. That wasn't the question. Serena hesitated. I haven't eaten since breakfast. Mason got up and rummaged through the kitchen. He found half a leftover pizza in the fridge and reheated 2 slices in the microwave. When he handed her a plate, Serena stared at it like he'd offered her something incomprehensible. It's just pizza, Mason said. I know. She took a bite and closed her eyes. Thank you. They ate in silence. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving only the sound of water dripping from the gutters. Mason watched Serena carefully, trying to reconcile the exhausted woman on his couch with the untouchable billionaire he'd seen on television. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 30, and without the professional makeup and designer suits, she looked almost normal. Almost. Can I ask you something? Serena set down her pizza. Why did you stop? Tonight. You could have just kept driving. I don't know, Mason said honestly. Temporary insanity? Most people would have called 911 and left. Yeah, well, I'm not most people, apparently. Serena studied him for a long moment. You don't recognize me, do you? From the news. I recognize you. I just don't care. Everyone cares. Not everyone. Mason stood and gathered their plates. Look, I don't know what kind of life you usually live, but here's how tonight works. You sleep on the couch. I sleep in my room. Tomorrow morning, you figure out your next move. That's it. No drama, no favors, no expectations. Okay. Serena's voice was quiet. Mason? He turned at the kitchen sink. That's your name, right? I heard the pharmacist say it. Yeah, Mason Reed. You got it all sit there. Thank you, Mason Reed. Serena pulled the blanket tighter around herself. For not leaving me in that car. I know you didn't have to stop. I know you had every reason to keep driving. But you stopped anyway. That means something. Mason didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and headed for his bedroom. He lay awake for 2 hours, staring at his ceiling, wondering what the hell he'd just done. What? When Mason woke the next morning, the apartment was silent. For one disorienting moment, he wondered if the entire previous night had been a fever dream. Then he smelled coffee. He found Serena in this kitchen, still wearing her ruined clothes from last night, attempting to operate his ancient coffee maker. She'd already managed to brew a pot without burning the place down, which was more than some of his dates had accomplished. Not that this was a date. Morning, Mason said. Serena turned. The butterfly bandage was still on her temple, and bruises had darkened around her eyes, but she looked more alert than she had last night. I hope you don't mind. I found the coffee. It's fine. Mason poured himself a cup. How's your head? Hurts, but I'll live. She paused. I need to ask you something, and I understand if the answer is no. What? Can I stay one more day? Mason set down his coffee. You said you'd figure out your next move this morning. I know, but I made some calls. My attorney, my head of security, the one I actually trust. They're working on getting me somewhere safe, but it's going to take time. 24 hours, maybe less. Serena's voice was steady, controlled. The CEO voice. I can pay you, whatever you think is fair. I don't want your money. Then what do you want? I want you to tell me the truth. Mason crossed his arms. Who's trying to kill you, and why? Serena was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat down at his small kitchen table and folded her hands. My father built Veil Technologies from nothing, she said. When he died 2 years ago, I took over as CEO. Most of the board thought I was too young, too inexperienced. They were probably right. But I worked my ass off to prove them wrong. And it was working until 6 months ago. What happened 6 months ago? I discovered that 3 of my senior executives were embezzling money, millions of dollars. They'd been doing it for years, probably since before my father died. When I confronted them, they denied everything. Then they went to the board and accused me of financial mismanagement, said I was unstable, paranoid. They painted me as a spoiled heiress who couldn't handle the pressure. Mason listened without interrupting. I hired private investigators, Serena continued, built a case. I was planning to expose them next week at the shareholders' meeting. But they found out. Last night, my head of security, one of the men I trusted most, tried to run me off the road. When that didn't work, he shot at my car. I barely got away. Why not go to the police? Because I don't know who else is involved. If I surface now, before I have proof, they'll destroy me. The media already thinks I'm some ice queen who inherited everything and can't handle it. One leaked story about me losing control would tank the company's stock and give the board an excuse to force me out. Then the people who've been stealing from my father's legacy win everything. Mason refilled his coffee, processing. So what's the plan? I have digital copies of the evidence stored in 3 separate locations. My attorney is retrieving them. Once I have proof in hand, I can go public. But until then, I need to stay invisible. Serena met his eyes. I'm sorry to ask. I know this isn't your problem, but I don't have anywhere else to go. Everyone in my world is either bought off or too scared to help. And you think you are safe here. I think I'm safer here than anywhere else. Nobody would expect me to be in a... She stopped herself. In a shitty apartment with a single dad? Mason finished. I wasn't going to say that. But you thought it. Serena stood abruptly. You're right. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have asked. I'll figure something else out. She moved toward the door, but Mason stepped in front of her. One more day, he said. That's it. Then you're gone, and we never speak about this again. Yeah. Deal. Serena's shoulders relaxed slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Mason glanced at the clock. It was almost 9. I need to go pick up my daughter. She's going to have questions. A lot of questions. And I'm not going to lie to her. What are you going to tell her? That you're a friend who needed a place to crash. That's it. I'm not your friend. I know. But Emma's 6. She doesn't need the full story. Mason grabbed his keys and headed next door. Mrs. Chen had already fed Emma breakfast and braided her hair, which made Mason feel like the world's worst father for the 100th time this week. Feeling better, sweetheart? He knelt down and kissed Emma's forehead. No fever. My throat doesn't hurt anymore, Emma announced proudly. Mrs. Chen made me soup. What? Mrs. Chen is a miracle worker. Mason thanked his neighbor profusely, promised to pay her back somehow, and carried Emma back to their apartment. Daddy, who's that? Emma whispered as soon as they walked in. Serena stood in the living room, looking wildly out of place in her designer clothes and bare feet. She'd clearly heard them coming and had frozen mid-step, like she wasn't sure what to do around a child. "This is Miss Vale," Mason said carefully. "She's staying with us for a little while. Is that okay?" Emma studied Serena with the unnerving directness that only 6-year-olds could manage. Why? Because she needed help. Remember how we talked about helping people when they need it? Like when you fixed Mr. Peterson's computer. Exactly like that. Emma seemed to accept this. She walked right up to Serena and tilted her head. "You're really pretty. Are you a princess?" Serena blinked. "No, definitely not. You look like a princess, except princesses don't have band-aids on their face." "Emma," Mason warned, "it's okay." Serena knelt down to Emma's eye level, and something in her expression softened. "I got hurt last night, but I'm fine now. Your dad helped me." "He's good at helping people," Emma said matter-of-factly. "One time he drove Mrs. Chen to the hospital when her back was bad, and he always fixes people's computers even when they can't pay him. Daddy says helping people is important even when it's hard." Mason felt his face heat. "Emma, why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Can Miss Vale come?" "I don't think—" "I'd love to," Serena said. Mason watched in mild disbelief as his daughter grabbed the hand of one of the richest women in America and dragged her toward the bedroom. Serena glanced back at him with an expression that might have been panic. He mouthed, "You're on your own," and headed for the kitchen. 20 minutes later, he heard laughter. Actual laughter. He peeked into Emma's room and found them sitting on the floor surrounded by stuffed animals. Serena was holding a threadbare elephant while Emma narrated an elaborate story about jungle adventures. "And then the elephant said, 'I'm not scared of crocodiles,'" Emma announced in a deep voice. "Very brave elephant," Serena said seriously. "His name is Mr. Trunk. Mommy gave him to me before she went to heaven." Serena's eyes flicked to Mason in the doorway. He shook his head slightly. "Not now." "Mr. Trunk is lucky to have you taking care of him," Serena said gently. "Do you have stuffed animals?" "I used to, when I was your age, but I lost them a long time ago." "That's sad." Emma patted Serena's hand. "You can share Mr. Trunk if you want. He's good at making people feel better." Something cracked in Serena's expression, just for a second, before she pulled it back together. "Thank you, Emma. That's very kind." Mason cleared his throat. "Lunch, Emma. Go wash your hands." After Emma scampered off, Serena stood slowly, still holding the stuffed elephant. She looked at Mason. "She's wonderful," Serena said quietly. "Yeah, she is." I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to." "It's fine." Mason took the elephant and set it back on Emma's bed. "She likes you. That's not a bad thing." "It is if I'm gone tomorrow." "Then don't make promises you can't keep." They stood there in the cramped bedroom, surrounded by toys and children's drawings taped to the walls, and Mason realized how surreal this entire situation had become. Less than 24 hours ago, this woman had been bleeding in a crashed car. Now she was playing with his daughter like a normal person. Except she wasn't normal. And tomorrow she'd be gone, back to her world of boardrooms and billions, and Mason would go back to fixing computers and scraping by on $6 grocery budgets. "Mason?" Serena's voice was softer than he'd heard it. "I meant what I said, about paying you. Not just for letting me stay, for everything. The risk you're taking. I don't want your money," Mason said again. "I want you to figure out your mess and get out of my life before it ruins hers." He walked out before Serena could respond. Lunch was tense. Emma chattered endlessly about her stuffed animals, while Serena picked at the sandwich Mason had made, and Mason himself tried not to think about how badly this could all go wrong. After Emma finished eating, she demanded that Serena help her with a jigsaw puzzle. Mason started to object, but Serena was already sitting on the floor. "I'm terrible at puzzles," Serena warned. "That's okay. I'll teach you." And she did. For the next hour, Emma patiently explained her puzzle strategy, while Serena followed instructions like a serious adult taking direction from a very small boss. Mason watched from the kitchen, ostensibly doing dishes, but mostly just observing how natural they looked together. It scared him more than he wanted to admit. That night, after Emma was asleep, Mason and Serena sat on opposite ends of the couch. The television was on, but neither of them was watching. She talks about her mother, Serena said eventually. Emma. She mentioned her at dinner. Claire died 3 years ago. Car accident. Mason's voice was flat. Emma was only 3. She doesn't remember much. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything. Serena was quiet for a moment. Is that why you stopped last night? When you saw my car? Mason turned to look at her. What? I was just thinking, you must have seen a lot of crashes. After what happened to your wife, most people would avoid them, but you stopped. I don't know why I stopped, Mason said honestly. I just did. Well, I'm grateful you did. They lapsed into silence again. Mason could feel exhaustion pulling at him, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. Tomorrow, Serena would leave. Tomorrow, this would all be over. Tomorrow, his life would go back to normal. Except he wasn't sure normal felt right anymore. Mason? Serena's voice was barely above a whisper. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. Doesn't mean I'll answer. What was she like? Your wife? Mason closed his eyes. Nobody asked him that anymore. People asked how he was doing, how Emma was adjusting, if he needed anything. But nobody asked about Claire. She was stubborn, Mason said finally. Really stubborn. She'd get an idea in her head and just run with it, no matter how crazy it was. Like the time she decided we should adopt 3 shelter dogs, even though we lived in a tiny apartment. Or when she signed us up for salsa dancing lessons, even though I have 2 left feet. Sounds exhausting. It was. But it was also... Mason's throat tightened. It was good. She made everything feel bigger, more important, like life was something to grab onto instead of just survive. You loved her. Yeah, I did. Serena drew her knees up to her chest. I've never had that. Someone who loved me for me. Everyone in my life either wants something or they're afraid of me. Sometimes both. Now that sounds lonely. It is. She rested her chin on her knees. I built this entire empire. Billions of dollars, thousands of employees. And I can't think of a single person I could call at 2 a.m. just to talk. Isn't that pathetic? Mason didn't answer. He didn't think it was pathetic. He thought it was the saddest thing he'd heard in a long time. I should let you sleep, Serena said, standing. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. Yeah, probably. She hesitated at the hallway. Mason, thank you for treating me like a person. You have no idea how rare that is. After she disappeared toward the couch, Mason sat alone in the dim living room for a long time, wondering what the hell he was doing and why he couldn't seem to make himself care. Mason woke to the smell of something burning. He bolted upright, disoriented, before remembering that a billionaire was sleeping on his couch, and his life had become completely insane. The clock on his nightstand read 6:47 a.m. Smoke detector hadn't gone off yet, which meant the apartment wasn't actually on fire. Probably. He stumbled into the kitchen and found Serena standing over the stove, staring down at what might have once been pancakes but now looked like charcoal discs. She was wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago, her hair pulled back in a messy knot, and she looked utterly defeated by breakfast food. I was trying to help, Serena said without looking up. Emma mentioned yesterday that she loves pancakes. I thought... She gestured helplessly at the smoking pan. When's the last time you cooked anything? Mason asked. Define cooked. Made food. With heat. In a kitchen. Serena thought about it. I was 12. My father had just fired our chef for stealing. I tried to make mac and cheese from a box and somehow set off the fire alarm in our penthouse. He hired 2 new chefs the next day. But Mason took the spatula from her hand and turned off the burner. Go sit down before you burn the place down. I was just trying to I know, but you're terrible at it. Sit. For a moment, Serena looked like she might argue. Then her shoulders sagged, and she retreated to the table. Mason scraped the burnt pancakes into the trash and started over, measuring flour and milk while Serena watched in silence. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. I can order food. I have my assistant's emergency credit card number memorized. Your assistant knows you're here? No, but the card is registered to a shell company, untraceable. Of course it is. Mason poured batter onto the griddle. Look, if you want to help, you can set the table. Plates are in the cabinet above the sink. Forks in the drawer. Serena stood and opened the wrong cabinet first, then the wrong drawer. And Mason realized she genuinely had no idea how a normal kitchen worked. She'd probably never set a table in her life. The thought was depressing and a little bit funny. Emma likes strawberry syrup, Mason said. It's in the fridge door, the cheap stuff. Don't judge. I wasn't going to judge. Everyone judges. Serena found the syrup and set it on the table alongside 3 mismatched plates. You think I look down on people who don't have money. That's not true, isn't it? No, I look down on people who are cruel, people who lie, people who hurt others for profit. She arranged the forks with careful precision. Money doesn't make someone good or bad. It just makes them louder. Mason flipped a pancake. That's surprisingly philosophical for someone who tried to poison my daughter with burnt breakfast. I said I was sorry. You didn't, actually. Well, I am. Serena paused. I'm not good at this. Normal things. I don't know how to cook or do laundry or play with kids. My entire life has been board meetings and PR events and people telling me what to say and how to act. Being here, in your apartment, it's like I'm in a foreign country where I don't speak the language. Welcome to how most people feel every day, Mason said. He plated the pancakes just as Emma's door creaked open. His daughter appeared in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, hair sticking up in 12 different directions. Pancakes! Emma's face lit up. She scrambled into her chair and grabbed a fork. Did you make these, Miss Vale? Your father did, Serena said quickly. I supervised. That means Daddy did all the work and you watched. Mason choked on his coffee. Serena's cheeks flushed pink. Emma, Mason said. That's rude, but it's true. You always say we should tell the truth. I do say that, but there's a polite way to tell the truth. Emma considered this while drowning her pancakes in strawberry syrup. Sorry, Miss Vale. I'm sure you're good at other things. It's okay, Serena said. You're right. I'm not very helpful in the kitchen. What are you good at? Emma, it's fine, Mason. Serena picked at her own pancake. I'm good at math and reading contracts and firing people who steal from my company. Emma's eyes went wide. You fire people? Sometimes, when they do bad things. Like when Mr. Henderson got fired from the grocery store for taking money from the register? Exactly like that. Emma nodded solemnly, apparently satisfied with this explanation. She chewed thoughtfully for a moment before asking, Do you have kids, Miss Vale? The question landed like a brick. Serena's fork froze halfway to her mouth. No, she said finally. I don't. Why not? Emma, that's enough, Mason said firmly. I was just asking. I know, but some questions are private. Remember we talked about private questions? Emma slumped in her chair. Sorry. Don't apologize to me, apologize to Miss Vale. Sorry, Miss Vale. Serena's expression was carefully neutral. It's all right, Emma. You didn't know. They finished breakfast in uncomfortable silence. Afterward, Emma retreated to her room to get dressed while Mason cleared the dishes. Serena stood at the window, staring out at the gray Chicago morning. I didn't mean to make things awkward, she said. You didn't. Emma's 6. She asks questions. That's what 6-year-olds do. I should have just answered her. You did answer her. Not really. Serena turned from the window. The truth is, I never thought about having children. My whole life was the company, my father's legacy. There wasn't room for anything else. Mason dried a plate. And now? Now I'm hiding in a stranger's apartment while people try to destroy everything I've built. So I guess the answer is still no. Before Mason could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from his biggest client. Server down. Customers can't access checkout. Need you ASAP. Damn it, Mason muttered. What's wrong? Work emergency. I have to go fix a server issue for a client across town. He looked at Serena. I'll be gone maybe 3 hours. 4 at most. What about Emma? Mrs. Chen can watch her. She usually does when I have emergency calls. Or I could stay with her. Mason stopped. What? I could watch Emma while you're gone. Serena's voice was steady, but her hands were clasped tightly together. I know I'm not. I know I burned the pancakes, but I can keep her safe. I promise. You don't know how to take care of a kid. I know how to keep people safe. It's literally my job, just a different kind of people. Serena met his eyes. Let me help. Please. I feel useless just sitting here waiting. Mason wanted to say no. Every parental instinct screamed at him not to leave his daughter with someone he'd known for exactly 36 hours. But something in Serena's expression made him hesitate. She looked desperate, not for his approval, for the chance to be useful, to matter in a way that had nothing to do with money or power. Fine, Mason said against his better judgment, but you follow my rules. Emma doesn't leave the apartment. She doesn't answer the door. She doesn't talk to anyone she doesn't know. And if anything, and I mean anything, seems wrong, you call me immediately. I will. I'm serious, Serena. If someone knocks on that door, I hide, with Emma, in the bedroom closet, and I call you. Serena's voice was firm. I understand. I won't let anything happen to her. Mason grabbed his toolkit and his jacket. Before leaving, he knocked on Emma's door. Hey, sweetheart, I have to go fix a computer. Miss Vale is going to stay with you, okay? Emma looked up from the book she was reading. Just you two? Just you two. Mrs. Chen is next door if you need her, but Miss Vale is in charge. Okay, Daddy. He kissed the top of her head and left before he could change his mind. The server job took longer than expected. What should have been a simple reboot turned into a full diagnostic when Mason discovered the client's entire backup system had failed 3 weeks ago, and nobody had noticed. By the time he finished, it was almost 1 in the afternoon and his phone had 6 missed calls, all from Serena. Mason's heart stopped. He called back immediately. Serena answered on the first ring. Mason, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. Everything's fine. What happened? Nothing happened. Emma's fine. She's right here. We're both fine. Serena's words tumbled out fast. I didn't know what to do about lunch. Emma said she wanted grilled cheese, but I don't know how to make grilled cheese, and I tried to look it up, but your internet is really slow, and then I thought maybe I should just order something, but Emma said you don't like when people waste money on delivery, and I panicked. Mason closed his eyes and breathed out slowly. Serena. Yes? There's bread in the drawer, cheese in the fridge, butter in the door. Put butter on the outside of the bread, cheese on the inside, cook it in a pan on medium heat until it's golden brown. Flip it once, that's it. Silence. That's it? Serena repeated. That's it. You can do this. I believe in you. You're making fun of me. Little bit, but I also mean it. Mason started his car. I'll be home in 20 minutes. Try not to burn the apartment down before I get there. When Mason walked in, he found Emma and Serena sitting on the floor surrounded by crayons and construction paper. 2 slightly charred but edible grilled cheese sandwiches sat on plates beside them. Emma was drawing elaborate flowers while Serena attempted what looked like a very terrible cat. You're back! Emma jumped up and hugged his legs. Look what we made! Miss Vale taught me how to draw perspective. Mason looked at the drawings. Perspective? It's when things that are far away look smaller than things that are close, Emma explained with the confidence of a child who'd just learned something new. See? This flower is big because it's close, and this flower is tiny because it's far away in the background. That's actually impressive, Mason admitted. Miss Vale used to take art classes, Emma continued, when she was little like me, before she had to do boring business stuff all the time. Emma, Serena said, business isn't boring. You said it was boring this morning when you were telling me about meetings. I said some meetings are boring. That's different. Mason watched them bicker and felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. They looked natural together, like they'd known each other for months instead of days. Emma was completely at ease, arguing with Serena the same way she'd argue with Mrs. Chen or Mason himself. And Serena looked almost happy. Did you eat? Mason asked. We both had grilled cheese, Emma announced proudly. Miss Vale only burned 1. The other one was perfect. I burned the first attempt, Serena clarified. The second one was acceptable. It was better than acceptable, Emma said loyally. It was really good. Mason's phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. He stepped into the kitchen to answer. Mason Reed? The voice was professional, female, unfamiliar. Who's asking? My name is Catherine Winters. I'm Serena Vale's attorney. She gave me your number as an emergency contact. I need to speak with her immediately. Mason glanced toward the living room where Serena was helping Emma clean up the art supplies. Hold on. He covered the phone. Serena, your lawyer. Serena's head snapped up. She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and took the phone. Catherine? Yes. Mason couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he watched Serena's face go through several expressions in rapid succession. Relief, confusion, anger, fear. Are you absolutely certain? Serena asked. A pause. How did they, Another pause. No, that's not going to work. We need another option. Her voice dropped lower. Because I can't risk. Catherine, if I surface now without proof, they'll destroy me. You know they will. Mason guided Emma back to her room, giving Serena privacy. When he returned 5 minutes later, she was sitting on the couch with her head in her hands. What happened? Mason asked. They found my evidence. Serena's voice was hollow. All 3 backup locations. My lawyer doesn't know how, but someone got to them first. Everything I had, every document, every email, every transaction record, it's gone. What does that mean? It means I have nothing. She looked up and Mason saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Defeat. Without proof, I'm just a paranoid CEO making wild accusations. The board will force me out. The company will go to the people who've been stealing from it for years, and there's nothing I can do to stop them. Mason sat down beside her. There has to be another way. He spat. There isn't. I've been over this 1,000 times. Without documentation, it's my word against theirs. And they've spent months convincing everyone that I'm unstable. Serena laughed bitterly. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am unstable. I've been hiding in a stranger's apartment, playing with crayons, burning grilled cheese. What kind of CEO does that? The human kind, Mason said. Serena turned to look at him. What? You're acting like being here, being normal for 2 days, is somehow proof that you're failing. It's not. It just means you're a person, not a corporation, not a brand. A person who burns food and draws terrible cats and tries too hard to help with breakfast. My cat wasn't that terrible. It was pretty terrible. Emma liked it. Emma is 6 and kind. Mason leaned back against the couch. Look, I don't know anything about corporate warfare or billion-dollar companies, but I know what it looks like when someone's been running on empty for too long. You're exhausted, not just physically. You're exhausted from being Serena Vale, CEO, all the time. Maybe that's why you stopped in that intersection long enough for someone to catch up to you. Maybe part of you was tired of running. Serena was quiet for a long moment. That's a very astute observation for a computer repairman. I also fix people's Wi-Fi routers. I contain multitudes. She almost smiled. Almost. My attorney wants me to go public tomorrow. Hold a press conference. Admit there was a security breach, but frame it as an attempted corporate espionage attack from competitors. Control the narrative before my enemies do. What do you want to do, Saz? I want to disappear. Move to a small town somewhere. Open a bookstore. Learn how to make grilled cheese without burning it. You'd be bored in a week. You're probably right. Serena stood and walked to the window. I built that company from rubble after my father died. Everyone said I'd fail. Everyone said I was too young, too inexperienced, too emotional. And I proved them wrong. Every single one of them. I turned Vale Technologies into something bigger and better than it was under my father. And now I'm going to lose it all because I trusted the wrong people. You're not going to lose it. How can you possibly know that? Because you're stubborn, Mason said. Really stubborn. Emma asked you to draw a cat and you tried 17 times until you got one that didn't look like a potato with ears. Someone that stubborn doesn't just give up. Serena turned from the window. You counted? I counted. The 14th one was the worst. The 14th one had character. It had 3 legs and no tail. Artistic license. They stared at each other for a moment, and then Serena laughed. It was a real laugh. Not the practiced CEO laugh Mason had heard in television interviews. It was messy and surprised, like she'd forgotten what genuine laughter felt like. "You're very strange, Mason Reed," she said. "Right back at you, Serena Vale." Emma appeared in the doorway, still clutching her drawings. "Are you staying for dinner, Miss Vale?" Serena glanced at Mason. He could see the question in her eyes, the uncertainty. She was asking permission to stay in a life that wasn't hers, even though she had nowhere else to go. "Yeah," Mason said. "She's staying." That night, Mason made spaghetti while Serena and Emma set the table together. Emma narrated the entire process like a sports commentator, pointing out when Serena put the forks on the wrong side and patiently explaining that napkins go on the left. Serena followed instructions with the serious concentration of someone defusing a bomb. During dinner, Emma told them about her day at school before she'd gotten sick, about her best friend Marcus, who could burp the alphabet, about her teacher Mrs. Patterson, who had a dog named Biscuit. Mason had heard most of these stories before, but he watched Serena listen like every detail mattered. "Do you have a dog?" Emma asked Serena between bites of pasta. "No, I'm not home enough to take care of one." "That's sad. Everyone should have a dog, or a cat, or a hamster, something fuzzy to hug when you're lonely." "Emma," Mason warned. "What? It's true. You always say Mr. Trunk helps when I'm sad." "Mr. Trunk is a stuffed elephant, but he's still fuzzy." Emma turned to Serena. "Don't you get lonely living all by yourself in a big house with no fuzzy things?" Serena set down her fork. For a second, Mason thought she might deflect or change the subject. Instead, she said quietly, "Yes, I do get lonely sometimes." "Then you should get a dog. Dogs are good at fixing lonely." "I'll think about it." After dinner, Emma insisted they watch a movie together. Mason tried to give Serena an out, but she settled onto the couch beside Emma without hesitation. They ended up watching some animated film about talking animals that Mason had seen approximately 47 times. Emma provided commentary throughout, while Serena asked questions that suggested she'd never actually watched a children's movie in her life. "Wait, why is the mouse friends with the cat?" Serena asked. "Because they're different kinds of friends," Emma explained patiently. "Not the eating kind, the helping kind." "That seems unlikely from a biological standpoint." "Miss Vale, it's a cartoon." "Right, sorry." Mason glanced over and saw Emma had fallen asleep with her head on Serena's shoulder. Serena sat perfectly still, like she was afraid any movement might break something precious. "You can wake her up," Mason whispered. "She's a heavy sleeper. She's fine where she is." They stayed like that until the movie ended. Then Mason carefully lifted Emma and carried her to bed. When he returned, Serena was still on the couch, staring at her hands. "You're good with her," Serena said. "With Emma. You make it look easy." "It's not easy. I fail constantly. Burn dinner, forget permission slips, let her watch too much TV when I'm too tired to parent properly." Mason sat down in the armchair. "But I show up. That's the only thing that really matters. Just showing up." "I don't know how to show up for people. Not really. I show up for board meetings and investor calls and product launches. But that's not the same thing, is it?" "No, it's not." Serena pulled her knees up to her chest. "When I was Emma's age, my father was building the company from nothing. We lived in a tiny apartment, probably not that different from this one. He worked 18-hour days. My mother had already left by then. Said she didn't sign up to be poor. So it was just me and him and a lot of takeout containers." Mason listened without interrupting. "I used to sit in his office after school, doing homework while he made phone calls and argued with suppliers. And I thought if I was just quiet enough, helpful enough, smart enough, he'd have time for me. But there was always another crisis, another deal, another problem that mattered more than a lonely kid who wanted attention." Serena's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was reciting someone else's story. "Then the company took off. We moved to the penthouse. He hired staff. And somehow that made it worse because now there were even more layers between us. More people. More obligations." "Did it get better, miss?" Mason asked. "Before he died?" "No, it got worse because I became part of the company, his protege, his successor. We stopped being father and daughter and became CEO and heir apparent. She rested her chin on her knees. When he died, everyone expected me to cry at the funeral. I didn't. I just felt empty, like I'd lost something I never actually had in the first place. That's awful, Mason said. It's just how things are. Were. I don't know anymore. Serena looked at him. But watching you with Emma tonight, the way you listen to her, the way you take her seriously even when she's talking about alphabet burping friends, I realized I never had that. And I don't know if I'm angry about it or just sad. Both is allowed. Is it? Yeah. Feelings aren't mutually exclusive. You can be angry and sad and grateful and terrified all at the same time. That's just being alive. Serena studied him for a long moment. How did you get so wise about emotions? Therapy, lots of therapy. After Claire died, I was a mess. Couldn't function, couldn't take care of Emma properly. Mrs. Chen basically raised her for 6 months while I figured out how to be a human again. Mason ran a hand through his hair. I learned that pretending you're fine doesn't make you fine. It just makes you a liar. I'm very good at being a liar. I know. I've watched you pretend you're okay for 2 days. You're not okay. No, Serena admitted. I'm not. So stop pretending, at least while you're here, in this apartment, with me and Emma. You don't have to be Serena Vale, billionaire CEO. You can just be a person who's scared and angry and doesn't know what to do next. Serena's eyes were bright. She blinked rapidly. I think that's the nicest thing anyone said to me in years, which is either very kind of you or very depressing for me. Both is allowed, Mason repeated. She laughed, but it came out shaky. I should let you sleep. You have work tomorrow. So do you, apparently. Press conference. Don't remind me. Serena stood to head for the couch, but Mason caught her wrist gently. For what it's worth, I think you should fight. Not because you owe it to your father or the company or anyone else, but because you deserve to win. And because walking away from something you built just because someone else wants to steal it, that's not who you are. How do you know who I am? You've known me for 2 days. Sometimes 2 days is enough. They stood there in the dim living room, close enough that Mason could see the exact moment Serena's carefully constructed walls started to crack. She pulled her wrist away, but not quickly, not like she was running. More like she was preserving something she didn't know how to protect. Good night, Mason. Good night, Serena. Mason went to bed but didn't sleep. He lay awake listening to the sounds of the city outside his window and the quiet rustling from the living room where Serena was probably also lying awake. Tomorrow she'd leave. Tomorrow his life would go back to normal. Except normal felt wrong now. Incomplete somehow. He fell asleep thinking about burnt pancakes and terrible drawings, and the way Serena had smiled when Emma fell asleep on her shoulder, like she'd been given something rare and breakable and didn't know what to do except hold very still. The next morning, Mason woke to voices in the kitchen. He checked the time, barely 6 a.m., and stumbled out to find Serena and Emma sitting at the table together, sharing a plate of toast. You're up early, Mason said. Miss Vale couldn't sleep, Emma reported, so I heard her making toast and I came to help. By help, she means supervise, Serena clarified. Apparently I was buttering it wrong. You were putting way too much butter on, Emma said seriously. Daddy says we have to make the butter last because it's expensive. Mason felt his face heat. Emma. It's true, though. You said that last week when I wanted butter on my carrots. Butter on carrots? Serena looked horrified. They taste better that way. While Emma explained her controversial food opinions, Mason made coffee and tried to ignore the knot forming in his stomach. Today was the day. Serena's attorney would arrive. There would be plans, preparations. And then she'd be gone, back to her world of corporate battles and press conferences, and this strange interlude would be over. Mason. Serena was watching him. You okay? Fine, just tired. Emma finished her toast and announced she needed to get dressed for school. After she left, Serena stood and brought her plate to the sink. Catherine is sending a car at noon, she said quietly. Security team, they'll take me to a safe location to prepare for the press conference. That's good, you'll be safe. Yeah. Serena didn't sound convinced. I wanted to thank you for everything, for stopping that night, for letting me stay, for treating me like a person instead of a problem. You were never a problem. I was definitely a problem. I burned your food and invaded your space and put you and Emma at risk. She turned to face him. But you helped anyway. Why? Mason leaned against the counter. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe because I'm an idiot. Maybe because I saw someone who needed help and couldn't walk away. Maybe because... He stopped. Because what? Because you remind me of Emma. When she's pretending she's not scared. Serena's expression softened. I'm not as brave as Emma. Neither am I. But we fake it pretty well. They stood in the kitchen while morning light filtered through the window, and Mason thought about all the things he should say and wouldn't. About how the apartment would feel empty without her arguing with his daughter about art perspective. About how he'd gotten used to her terrible cooking attempts and her honest laugh. About how terrified he was that letting her walk out that door might be the biggest mistake he'd made since pulling over on a rainy street 3 nights ago. But he didn't say any of it. Because Serena Vale was a billionaire CEO with corporate enemies and a press conference to survive, and Mason Reed was a single father who fixed computers and scraped by on tight budgets. Their lives had intersected for 72 hours, and that was all it could ever be. I should go wake Emma, Mason said. Get her ready for school. Mason, wait. Serena reached out, then stopped herself. If things go badly today, if the press conference doesn't work, can I call you? You don't have my number. I memorized it from your phone screen the morning I made coffee. Sorry, force of habit. Mason should have been annoyed by that. Instead, he just felt sad. Yeah, you can call. I probably won't, Serena said quickly. I'll be fine. Catherine has a whole strategy, but just in case. Just in case, Mason repeated. Emma burst back into the kitchen wearing mismatched socks and carrying her backpack. Ready for school, Daddy. The next few hours passed in a blur of routine. Breakfast, brushing teeth, the walk to Emma's elementary school 8 blocks away. Mason held his daughter's hand while she chattered about a science project on butterflies, and he tried not to think about Serena back in his apartment, probably pacing while she waited for the security team. When they reached the school gates, Emma hugged him tight. Is Miss Vale still going to be there when I get home? Probably not, sweetheart. She has to go back to work. Oh. Emma's face fell. I wanted to show her my butterfly project. Maybe another time. Okay. Emma hesitated. Daddy, do you think Miss Vale is lonely? Like actually really lonely? Mason knelt down to his daughter's eye level. Why do you ask? Because last night, when we were watching the movie, she looked really sad. Like the kind of sad that doesn't go away even when happy things happen. Emma fiddled with her backpack straps. I just thought maybe she needs more friends. Real friends. Not work friends. I think you're right, Mason said quietly. You should be her friend, Daddy. You're good at being friends with lonely people. Like how you're friends with Mr. Peterson, even though he yells at everyone else. Mr. Peterson doesn't yell at everyone. Yes, he does. Mrs. Chen says he's a grumpy old coot, but you make him smile. Emma hugged him again. Just think about it, okay? Okay, sweetheart, now go. You're going to be late. Mason watched his daughter disappear into the school building, then walked slowly back toward his apartment, feeling like he was walking toward something ending before it ever really began. When Mason opened his apartment door, Serena was standing at the window with her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in rapid, clipped sentences that sounded nothing like the woman who'd burned pancakes yesterday morning. I don't care what the board thinks, Catherine. If they want me gone, they're going to have to force me out publicly. No quiet resignations, no settlements. She paused, listening. Because I'm done playing their game. Yes, I understand the risks. No, I haven't lost my mind. I'll see you at noon. She ended the call and turned. Her expression shifted when she saw Mason, the corporate mask slipping just slightly. How was drop-off? She asked. Emma thinks you're lonely and that I should be your friend. Serena blinked. What? Her exact words were, Daddy, you're good at being friends with lonely people. Mason closed the door behind him. Apparently, I made an impression on Mr. Peterson, the grumpy old man downstairs. I see. Serena set her phone on the coffee table. And what did you tell her? That I'd think about it. They stood on opposite sides of the small living room, and the space between them felt wider than it actually was. Mason could see Serena's walls rebuilding in real time, shoulders straightening, expression smoothing, that cool professional distance sliding back into place like armor. The car will be here in 2 hours, Serena said. I should probably, I don't know, prepare somehow. Practice what I'm going to say. You've done press conferences before. Not like this one. This time, I'm walking in with no evidence, no proof, nothing but my word against people who've spent months destroying my credibility. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. Catherine thinks I should focus on the cyber attack angle. Make it about corporate espionage instead of internal corruption. It's cleaner, easier to sell. But it's not the truth. No, it's not. But Mason moved to the kitchen and started making coffee, even though they'd both already had 2 cups. He needed something to do with his hands. So tell the truth. The truth gets me fired and possibly sued for defamation. The truth tanks the company's stock price and puts 3,000 employees out of work while we sort through the legal mess. Serena followed him, leaning against the doorframe. The truth is complicated and messy and doesn't fit into a nice soundbite for the evening news. Sounds like the truth usually does. When did you become so philosophical? I contain multitudes. Remember? Mason poured water into the coffee maker. Look, I don't know anything about running a billion-dollar company, but I know what it's like to have people not believe you when you're telling the truth. After Claire died, everyone had opinions. About how I was grieving wrong. About how I should move on faster. About how Emma needed a mother figure and I was being selfish by not dating. He measured coffee grounds with more force than necessary. And for a while, I let their opinions matter more than what I knew was right. I tried to be what they wanted instead of what Emma needed. It was a disaster. What changed? Mrs. Chen told me I was being an idiot, that I was the only one who actually knew my daughter and everyone else could mind their own business. Mason hit the brew button. She said it less politely than that. But the point stands. You're the only one who actually knows what happened in your company. So stop letting other people tell you how to handle it. Serena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Mrs. Chen sounds terrifying. She is, but she's also right about most things. I'd like to meet her properly, before I leave. Serena pushed off the doorframe. Actually, there's something I need to tell you. About last night, about what my attorney found. Mason turned. What did she find? Wiki is mit outside. Evidence. Not the files I'd backed up, those are definitely gone. But Catherine's investigative team found financial records that the embezzlers didn't know existed. Old server logs from before they started covering their tracks. It's not everything I had, but it's enough to prove the money went somewhere it shouldn't have. That's good news, right? It should be, except the records are incomplete. They show transactions, but not destinations. And without knowing where the money ended up, we can't prove who was behind it. Serena crossed her arms. Catherine wants to use it anyway. Force an investigation. Let the authorities follow the trail. But investigations take months, maybe years. And in the meantime, the people who tried to kill me are still running my company, still making decisions, still stealing. Her voice went hard. And I'll be sidelined, frozen out under the guise of letting the process work. Mason poured 2 cups of coffee and handed her one. So what's your plan? I don't have one. That's the problem. Serena wrapped both hands around the mug. For the first time in my professional life, I don't have a strategy. I don't have leverage. I don't have control. I just have partial evidence and a really good attorney telling me to trust the system. Do you trust the system? No. The system is designed to protect people like the ones who are trying to destroy me. Rich, connected, good at hiding behind lawyers and paperwork. She took a sip of coffee and winced. This is terrible, by the way. I know. I buy the cheap stuff. Mason leaned against the counter. Can I ask you something? And I want you to actually think about the answer instead of just giving me the CEO response. Okay, Okay, what do you actually want? Not what's best for the company or what your attorney thinks you should do. What do you want? Serena stared into her coffee mug. I want to make them pay. The people who betrayed my father's legacy, who tried to kill me, who made me feel like I was crazy for trusting my own instincts. She looked up. I want them to lose everything the way they tried to make me lose everything, and I want to watch it happen. That's honest. It's vindictive. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Mason set down his coffee. Claire used to say that anger was just love with nowhere to go. You loved your father's company. You loved what it represented. And someone took that and twisted it into something ugly. Of course you're angry. Of course you want revenge. Revenge isn't a business strategy. Maybe it should be. Serena almost smiled. You're a terrible influence, Mason Reed. I've been told that before. They drank their terrible coffee in comfortable silence while the clock ticked toward noon. Mason kept glancing at Serena, memorizing details he hadn't let himself notice before. The way she chewed her bottom lip when she was thinking. The small scar on her left hand that she rubbed absently when she was nervous. The fact that she'd been wearing the same clothes for 3 days and somehow still looked more put together than Mason did on his best day. I should change, Serena said suddenly. Catherine's bringing me fresh clothes in the car, but I can't exactly walk out of here looking like I've been sleeping on someone's couch for 3 days. Technically, you have been sleeping on someone's couch for 3 days. Yes, but the media doesn't need to know that. She set down her mug. Can I use your shower? Sure. Towels are in the bathroom closet. Hot water takes a minute to kick in, and the pressure's not great, but it works. Serena disappeared into the bathroom, and Mason heard the water start. He should have been working. He had 2 client emails waiting and a software patch that needed testing. But instead, he just stood in his kitchen trying to figure out when exactly his life had become a situation where a billionaire was showering in his apartment before heading off to fight corporate warfare. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Is the fancy lady still there? Mason stared at the message. He hadn't told Mrs. Chen about Serena, which meant either his neighbor was psychic or she'd seen Serena coming or going and drawn her own conclusions. He texted back, How did you know? I'm old, not blind. Saw her through your window yesterday when I was watering plants. Emma mention her? Yeah, she thinks I should be her friend. Smart girl. You could use more friends who aren't senior citizens or 6 years old. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Bring her by before she leaves. I want to meet the woman who got you to smile at your phone like that. Mason looked down and realized he was, in fact, smiling. He wiped the expression off his face and pocketed his phone. 20 minutes later, Serena emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, her wet hair dripping onto his floor. She looked younger without makeup, more vulnerable, and Mason had to actively look away. I forgot Catherine was bringing clothes, Serena said. I don't have anything to wear until she gets here. There's a robe on the back of the bathroom door. It's mine, so it'll be too big. But that works. Thanks. She disappeared again and returned wearing Mason's ancient blue bathrobe that had seen better days approximately 5 years ago. It swallowed her frame, sleeves hanging past her hands, hem dragging on the floor. She'd rolled up the sleeves and belted it tight, but she still looked ridiculous. Don't laugh, Serena warned. I'm not laughing. You're smiling. That's different. Mason pulled out a chair at the kitchen table. Sit. Your hair's dripping everywhere. Shrub. I don't have a hairdryer. I do. For Emma. Hold on. He rummaged through the bathroom closet and found Emma's pink hairdryer shaped like a cartoon cat. When he returned, Serena was sitting at the table looking at her hands again, that faraway expression on her face that meant she was thinking too hard about something. Mason plugged in the dryer. Lean back. You don't have to. I know. Lean back anyway. Serena tilted her head back and Mason carefully ran the dryer through her long, dark hair. He'd done this for Emma 1,000 times, but with Serena it felt different, more intimate, more dangerous. He focused on the task, sectioning her hair methodically, trying not to notice how she'd closed her eyes or how her shoulders had relaxed. My father used to do this, Serena said quietly, when I was very small, before the company got big, before everything changed. Mason didn't respond, just kept working. I'd forgotten about that until just now, she continued. We had this Sunday morning routine. He'd make scrambled eggs, badly, and I'd sit at our tiny kitchen table while he dried my hair before church. We stopped going to church once he got too busy, and he stopped doing my hair once he could afford to hire people for that. She opened her eyes. I haven't thought about those mornings in 20 years. Good memories? The only good memories I have of him, I think. Serena's voice caught slightly. Everything else is just business, work, the company. Even at the end, when he was sick, we spent his last months arguing about succession plans instead of just being father and daughter. Mason switched off the dryer. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made my choices. He made his. We built something impressive together, even if we destroyed our relationship in the process. She touched her now dry hair. Thank you for this. It's just hair. No, it's not. They sat at the kitchen table, Serena drowning in Mason's bathrobe, and Mason tried to think of something to say that wouldn't make this moment bigger than it already was. Before he could find words, someone knocked on the door. Mason checked his watch. 11:30. Too early for Catherine's security team. He looked through the peephole and saw two men in expensive suits. Not security, something else. His stomach dropped. Who is it? Serena whispered. I don't know, but they don't look friendly. The knock came again, harder this time. Mr. Reed, we know you're home. We just want to talk. Mason glanced at Serena. Her face had gone pale. All the relaxation from moments ago vanished. The bedroom, Mason mouthed. Now. Serena moved silently, disappearing into his bedroom and closing the door. Mason took a breath, then opened the front door with the chain still on. Can I help you? He asked. The first man was tall, mid-40s, with the kind of practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Reed, my name is David Hutchins. I'm with Vail Technologies Corporate Security. This is my associate, Mr. Chen. Okay. We're looking for Serena Vail. We have reason to believe she may have contacted you following a car accident 3 nights ago. Mason kept his face neutral. I don't know anyone named Serena Vail. Really? Hutchins tilted his head. Because our traffic camera footage shows your vehicle at the scene of Ms. Vail's accident, and your car was parked there for approximately 8 minutes. That's a long time to just drive past. I stopped to check if anyone needed help. Nobody did. I left. I see. Hutchins pulled out his phone and showed Mason a photo. It was grainy, clearly from a security camera, but it showed Mason helping someone into his car. This looks like more than just checking if someone needed help. Mason's heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept his voice steady. I gave someone a ride to the hospital. Dropped them at the emergency entrance. That's it. Which hospital? Northwestern. Funny. We checked with Northwestern. No Jane Does matching Ms. Vail's description were admitted that night. Hutchins' smile sharpened. Want to try again? I don't know what to tell you. I dropped someone off. What they did after that isn't my problem. The second man, Chen, spoke for the first time. His voice was flat, threatening in its lack of emotion. Mr. Reed, you should know that harboring a fugitive is a serious crime. A fugitive? I thought you said she was in a car accident. Ms. Vail is wanted for questioning regarding irregularities in company finances. If you know where she is and you're not telling us, that makes you an accessory. Accessory to what? Mason asked. Having a car accident? Hutchins' smile disappeared entirely. This doesn't have to be difficult. We're prepared to compensate you for your cooperation, generously. All we need is information about where Serena Vail went after you picked her up. I already told you. I don't know. $20,000, Hutchins said. Cash. Today. Just tell us what we need to know. Mason's hand tightened on the door. I think you should leave now. $50,000, Chen said. Final offer. Get off my doorstep. Hutchins' expression went cold. You're making a mistake, Mr. Reed. A very expensive mistake. We know you're struggling financially. Single father, barely making ends meet. Do you really want to throw away $50,000 to protect someone you don't even know? I want you to leave before I call the police. The police? Hutchins laughed. By all means, call them. Explain why you picked up an injured woman and didn't take her to a hospital. Explain why you lied to corporate security. I'm sure that'll go great for you. Mason started to close the door, but Chen's hand shot out and stopped it. One more thing, Chen said quietly. You have a daughter, don't you? Emma, 6 years old, attends Lincoln Elementary School. Every muscle in Mason's body went rigid. What did you just say? I'm simply observing that you have responsibilities, a child who depends on you. It would be unfortunate if your poor decisions affected her safety. The threat was clear, barely veiled. Mason wanted to put his fist through Chen's face, but the chain was still on the door, and these men had just proven they knew where his daughter went to school. I'm calling the police, Mason said. Right now. He slammed the door and immediately locked the deadbolt. Then he pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed. Serena emerged from the bedroom, still in his bathrobe. What happened? They know I picked you up. They have camera footage, and they just threatened Emma. Mason's voice was shaking with rage. They threatened my daughter. Oh my God. Serena's face crumbled. Mason, I'm so sorry. I never meant for... This isn't your fault. It is. It absolutely is. I brought this to your door. I put Emma at risk. Serena grabbed her ruined clothes from where they'd been folded on the couch. I need to leave. Right now. Before they come back. They're probably watching the building. I don't care. I can't stay here. Not if it means... Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't button her shirt. I won't let them hurt Emma because of me. Mason crossed the room and caught her hands. Stop. Just stop and think for a second. There's nothing to think about. They know I'm here. They threatened your daughter. The only way to keep her safe is for me to leave. And go where? Back to your car that's probably been found by now? To a hotel where they'll track your credit card in minutes? To Catherine, who might already be compromised? Mason tightened his grip on her hands. You walk out that door right now, and they grab you before you make it to the street. Then what? Emma's still at risk, and you're at the mercy of people who already tried to kill you once. Serena pulled her hands free. Then what do you suggest? I suggest we call Catherine. Tell her what just happened. Move up the timeline. Mason grabbed his phone. You wanted to fight? This is fighting. Not running away the second things get hard. Things aren't just hard, Mason. They threatened a 6-year-old child. I know. You think I don't know that? Mason's voice rose. That's my daughter they threatened. Mine. And I'm not letting them win by scaring me into doing exactly what they want. They stood facing each other, both breathing hard, and Mason saw the exact moment Serena's terror transformed into something else. Determination. The same stubborn fire he'd seen when she'd attempted to make grilled cheese 17 times until one didn't burn. Okay, Serena said quietly. Okay, call Catherine. But I swear to you, Mason, if anything happens to Emma because of me, it won't. I'll make sure of it. Mason called Catherine's number. She answered on the second ring. We have a problem, Mason said without preamble. Veil Technologies security just showed up at my apartment. They know Serena's here, and they threatened my daughter. Catherine's response was sharp, professional. Are they still there? No, I sent them away, but they're probably watching the building. I'm 10 minutes out. Don't leave the apartment. Don't answer the door for anyone. I'll handle this. How exactly are you going to handle? But Catherine had already hung up. Serena sat down heavily on the couch. This is such a mess. Yeah. Mason sat beside her. For what it's worth, I don't regret stopping that night, even with all of this. You should. This is exactly why I shouldn't have dragged you into my problems. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to help, and I'd choose it again. Serena looked at him. Why? You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're trying to do the right thing against people who don't care about right or wrong. I know you played with my daughter and listened to her stories even though you didn't have to. I know you're terrified, but you're still here instead of running. Mason rubbed his face. And I know you're the only person in the last 3 years who's made me feel like maybe there's more to life than just surviving day to day. Mason, I'm not asking for anything, Mason said quickly. I'm just saying this wasn't a mistake. Any of it. and I don't want you to think it was. Before Serena could respond, Mason's phone buzzed. A text from Lincoln Elementary School. Reminder: early dismissal today at 1 p.m. for teacher professional development. Mason's blood ran cold. Emma, I have to get Emma. What? Early dismissal, 1 p.m. I completely forgot. He checked the time, 12:15. I have to pick her up in 45 minutes, and those men know where her school is. Serena stood. I'll come with you. No, you need to stay here and wait for Catherine. I'm not letting you face those people alone. Emma can't see you, not like this, not with everything that's happening. Mason grabbed his jacket. Stay here, lock the door. Don't let anyone in except Catherine. Mason! He was already out the door. The walk to Emma's school usually took 12 minutes. Mason made it in 8, scanning every parked car and every stranger on the street. His mind raced through scenarios. What if Hutchins and Chen were already there? What if they approached Emma directly? What if they... He forced himself to stop. Panicking wouldn't help. He reached the school just as parents were starting to arrive for pickup. Mason positioned himself near the entrance where he could see everyone coming and going. He spotted Chen's car parked across the street, a black sedan with tinted windows, and his jaw clenched. They were watching. Emma emerged with her class at exactly 1 p.m., chattering with her friend Marcus about something that involved elaborate hand gestures. She spotted Mason and ran over. Daddy, you remembered early day. Of course I remembered. Mason lifted her up even though she was getting too big for that. Come on, let's go home. Can Marcus come over? Not today, sweetheart. But you always say... I know what I always say. Not today. Emma heard something in his tone and went quiet. Mason carried her down the street, walking fast, watching the black sedan in his peripheral vision. It didn't move. They weren't trying to grab Emma. They were just sending a message. We know where she is. We know when she's vulnerable. Back off. Mason held his daughter tighter and walked faster. When they reached his building, Mrs. Chen was standing in the hallway outside his apartment door with her arms crossed and an expression that could curdle milk. Mason Reed, she said. We need to talk. Mrs. Chen, what? Now's not a good time. There's a very fancy woman in your apartment crying on your couch, and 2 very unfriendly men came asking about her 20 minutes ago. I told them to take their corporate security badges and shove them somewhere anatomically uncomfortable, but they didn't listen. Mrs. Chen looked at Emma. Sweet girl, go in my apartment. Mrs. Chen, I have cookies and you can watch that cartoon about the singing animals. I want to stay with Daddy, Emma said. Emma, please, Mason said quietly. I need you to do what Mrs. Chen says, just for a little while. Something in his voice convinced her. Emma nodded and followed Mrs. Chen next door. Once she was safely inside, Mrs. Chen turned back to Mason. Talk. Now. It's complicated. I'm old, not stupid. Uncomplicated. Oh. Mason glanced at his apartment door, then back at Mrs. Chen. The woman in my apartment is in trouble. Bad trouble. And the people trying to hurt her just threatened Emma to get to her. Mrs. Chen's expression went from stern to dangerous. They threatened Emma? Not directly, but they made it very clear they know where she goes to school. Then you call the police. It's not that simple. These aren't random thugs. They're corporate security for $1 billion company. They'll make it look like I'm the problem, like I kidnapped their CEO. Mrs. Chen studied him for a long moment. Then she said, Is she worth it? This woman? Mason thought about Serena attempting to make pancakes, about her playing with Emma like every moment mattered, about the way she'd looked at him this morning while he dried her hair, like he'd given her something precious she didn't know she needed. Yes, Mason said. She's worth it. Then you protect her, and I'll protect Emma. Mrs. Chen squeezed his arm. But you better fix this fast, Mason, because I'm too old to fight off corporate thugs, and Emma deserves better than to be caught in someone else's war. I know. I'm working on it. Mason unlocked his apartment and found Serena exactly where Mrs. Chen had described. On the couch, her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. She looked up when he entered, and her eyes were red. Is Emma okay? Serena asked immediately. She's fine. She's with Mrs. Chen next door. Mason sat beside her. They were watching the school. Didn't do anything. Just wanted me to know they were there. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Serena wiped her eyes. I'm putting everyone you love at risk just by existing in your life. Where's Catherine? She came and went. She's arranging for a decoy motorcade to leave from the back of the building in 30 minutes. Create a distraction while I slip out the front in a delivery truck. Serena laughed bitterly. My life has become a spy movie, a really bad one. Did she say anything about the threats against Emma? She said she'd handle it, that Veil Technologies would face serious legal consequences for threatening a minor. But we both know that's not how this works. Powerful people don't face consequences. They hire better lawyers and make problems disappear. Mason's phone buzzed, Catherine's number. Mr. Reed, Catherine said when he answered. Change of plans. The motorcade idea won't work. They have too many people watching your building. We need something they won't expect. Like what? I need you to trust me, and I need Serena to be ready to move in exactly 20 minutes. Move where? You'll know when it happens. Just be ready. The line went dead. Mason looked at Serena. Catherine says 20 minutes, something they won't expect. That's not exactly reassuring. No, it's not. They sat in tense silence for 15 minutes. Then, through the window, Mason heard sirens. A lot of sirens. Police cars and fire trucks converged on the building across the street, lights flashing, creating immediate chaos on the block. Mason's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Back exit now. White van. Go. That's our cue, Mason said. They ran. Down the back stairs, out through the building's service entrance, into a waiting white van that looked like it belonged to a plumbing company. The door slid shut behind them, and the van pulled out immediately. Catherine was in the driver's seat. Buckle up. This might get interesting. What's happening across the street? Serena asked. False alarm. Someone called in a gas leak. It'll take them 30 minutes to clear the building and discover there's no leak. By then, you'll be somewhere safe. Catherine navigated through back streets with practiced ease. We're heading to a private airfield. I have a plane waiting. Where are we going? Somewhere you can hold your press conference without Veil Technologies security interfering. I've arranged for federal investigators to meet us there. They're very interested in the partial evidence we found. Serena grabbed Mason's hand. What about Emma? Those men? Already handled, Catherine said. I filed formal complaints with Chicago PD about the threats against Mr. Reed's daughter, and I've arranged for a private security to watch his building and Emma's school until this is resolved. No one from Veil Technologies will get near her. Mason felt Serena's hand shaking in his. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. We still have to get you out of the city. Catherine took a sharp turn. Mr. Reed, I'm going to drop you 2 blocks from your building. You'll need to get back before anyone notices you left. Wait, Serena said. Mason's coming with us. No, I'm not, Mason said quietly. Yes, you are. You can't go back there. It's not safe. Emma's there. I'm not leaving her. Catherine said she arranged security. I don't care. She's my daughter. I'm not getting on a plane and leaving her in Chicago with corporate thugs watching our building. Serena's grip on his hand tightened. Then I'm not going either. Yes, you are. This is your chance. Federal investigators, your press conference, everything you've been working toward. Not without you. Serena, I'm not leaving you and Emma to deal with the mess I created. Her voice was fierce. Either we all go or I stay. Catherine glanced in the rearview mirror. We don't have time for this. Decision. Now. Mason looked at Serena and saw the stubborn determination he'd come to recognize. She meant it. She'd actually throw away her chance at justice to stay in Chicago with him and Emma. It was the stupidest, most selfless thing anyone had done for him in years. Okay, Mason said. We all go. But we're stopping at my building first. I'm not leaving Emma with just private security and Mrs. Chen. 2 minutes, Catherine said. That's all you get. The van stopped 2 blocks from Mason's apartment. He jumped out and ran, his heart pounding. He burst into Mrs. Chen's apartment and found Emma exactly where he'd left her, watching cartoons and eating cookies. Daddy? She jumped up. You're back! We're going on an adventure, Mason said, kneeling down. Right now, we need to pack fast. An adventure where, Mus? I'll explain on the way. Can you grab Mr. Trunk and your favorite books? Quick as you can. Emma ran to get her things while Mason grabbed her medication from his apartment and threw some clothes in a backpack. Mrs. Chen appeared in his doorway. You're leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. Just for a few days? Until this gets sorted out. That woman, she's coming with you? Yeah. Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. She better be worth all this trouble. She is. Then go. Be safe. And call me when you land wherever you're going. Mason hugged her quickly. Thank you for everything. Don't get sentimental. You're coming back. And you're bringing that woman to dinner so I can properly interrogate her. 5 minutes later, Mason, Emma, and Serena were all in the white van, heading toward a private airfield on the outskirts of Chicago. Emma sat between them, clutching Mr. Trunk, eyes wide with excitement. Are we really going on a plane? Like, Emma whispered to Serena. Yes. Is that okay? I've never been on a plane before. Serena's expression softened. Then we'll have to make it special. Mason watched them, his daughter and this woman who'd crashed into his life 4 days ago, and he wondered what the hell he'd just agreed to. They were running. From corporate security, from threats, from everything familiar and safe. But Serena was holding Emma's hand, and Emma was smiling. And maybe that was enough. The private plane was smaller than Mason expected. 6 seats, leather interior, and a pilot who didn't ask questions when Catherine hustled them aboard. Emma pressed her face against the window, watching the ground crew prepare for takeoff, with the kind of wonder that made Mason's chest ache. Where are we going? Mason asked Catherine once they were airborne. Washington, D.C. I have contacts at the FBI who specialize in corporate fraud. They've agreed to interview Serena tonight. Catherine pulled out a tablet and started typing. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Major networks. Full coverage. By the time Veil Technologies realizes what's happening, it'll be too late to stop it. Serena sat across from Mason, watching Emma trace patterns on the foggy window. What about the threats against Emma? You said you handled it. I filed formal complaints with Chicago PD, documented everything Hutchins and Chen said, and I contacted a friend at the FBI, separate from the fraud investigators, who's looking into Veil Technologies' security practices. If they so much as breathe near Mr. Reed's building or Emma's school, they'll be facing federal charges for witness intimidation. That's not enough, Mason said. Catherine looked up from her tablet. Excuse me? You're assuming these people care about legal consequences. They already tried to kill Serena. They threatened a 6-year-old. Filing complaints isn't going to stop them. Then what would you suggest? I suggest you stop treating this like a normal corporate investigation and start treating it like what it is. Organized crime with good lawyers and stock portfolios. Mason leaned forward. These people destroyed evidence, attempted murder, threatened a child. And you think a press conference is going to fix that? The press conference is step 1, Catherine said evenly. Once Serena goes public, the media scrutiny makes it significantly harder for them to act. They can't make her disappear when the whole country is watching. They can make me disappear, Mason said. They can make Emma disappear. We're not billionaire CEOs, we're nobody. And that makes us easy targets. The cabin went quiet except for the hum of the engines. Emma had stopped drawing on the window and was watching the adults with worried eyes. He's right, Serena said quietly. I put them at risk. I need to fix it. You can't fix it by yourself, Catherine said. That's why you hired me. That's why we're doing this the right way. Legal, public, by the book. The book doesn't work when the other side is willing to tear out pages. Serena looked at Mason. I'm sorry. I should have thought this through better. I should have... Stop apologizing, Mason interrupted. What's done is done. Now we figure out how to keep Emma safe while you do what you need to do. Emma tugged on Mason's sleeve. Daddy? Are the bad people going to hurt us? Mason's heart cracked. He pulled his daughter onto his lap. No, sweetheart. We're not going to let that happen. But you said they threatened me. I know what I said, but Miss Vale and her lawyer are fixing it. and Daddy's going to make sure you're safe. I promise. Emma buried her face in his shoulder. I'm scared. I know, I am too. Serena reached across and touched Emma's hand. Emma, can I tell you something? Emma peeked out from Mason's shoulder. When I was a little girl, Serena said, I used to be scared all the time. Scared that my father's company would fail. Scared that we'd lose our home. Scared that everyone was lying to me about everything. And you know what my father told me? What? He said being scared just means you're smart enough to understand when something matters. Brave people aren't people who never get scared. They're people who do the right thing even when they're terrified. Are you scared now? Emma asked. Yes, very scared. But you're still being brave. I'm trying to be. Serena squeezed Emma's hand, and I promise you, everything your dad and I are doing is to keep you safe. You believe me? Emma nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? Anything. If you and Daddy fix the bad people problem, will you still come visit us after everything's done? Serena's eyes went bright. She glanced at Mason, then back at Emma. I'd like that very much. Good, because I still need to show you my butterfly project, and Daddy needs more friends who aren't just Mrs. Chen. Despite everything, Mason smiled. Thanks for that, kiddo. The flight took 2 hours. Catherine spent most of it on phone calls, coordinating with investigators and prepping for the press conference. Emma eventually fell asleep in Mason's lap, exhausted from the excitement and stress. Serena sat quietly, staring out the window at clouds painted orange by the setting sun. You don't have to do this, Serena said without looking at Mason. Come to Washington. Put Emma in danger. Catherine can arrange for you to go somewhere safe. A hotel under a fake name. Private security. You'd be protected. We're already in danger, Mason said. Hiding won't change that. But staying with me makes it worse. Maybe. Or maybe it makes it better because we're all together and can watch each other's backs. Mason adjusted Emma's weight in his lap. Besides, you need someone to tell you when you're being stupid. I'm being stupid right now? Little bit. You're trying to push us away because you think it'll keep us safe. But Emma's already attached to you. Sending us away now would hurt her more than helping her. Serena finally turned from the window. What about you? What about me? Are you attached to me? Or are you just doing this for Emma? Mason looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the CEO mask to the scared woman underneath. The one who'd burned his pancakes and played with his daughter and cried on his couch. The one who'd memorized his phone number and learned to make grilled cheese and asked him to dry her hair because it reminded her of her father. Yeah, Mason said quietly. I'm attached. That's a terrible idea. Most of my ideas are terrible. I'm consistent that way. Serena almost smiled. When this is over, if we survive it, what happens then? I don't know. We figure it out as we go. I'm not good at that. Figuring things out as I go. I like plans, strategies, clear objectives. How's that working out for you so far? Terribly. Then maybe try something different. They landed at a small private airport outside D.C. just after 8 p.m. A black SUV was waiting, this one actually driven by legitimate security personnel with credentials. Catherine verified 3 times before letting anyone near the vehicle. They drove to a nondescript hotel in Arlington, where Catherine had booked an entire floor under a corporate account that couldn't be traced to Serena. Emma woke up as they pulled into the parking garage. Are we there? We're there, sweetheart, Mason said. The hotel room was nicer than anywhere Mason had stayed in his life. 2 bedrooms connected by a living area with a kitchenette. Emma immediately claimed the bedroom with the bigger TV while Mason and Serena stood awkwardly in the living room. You should take the other bedroom, Mason said. Emma and I can share. Don't be ridiculous. You're not sharing a bed with a 6-year-old when there's a couch. I've slept in worse places. Mason, Serena's voice was firm. Take the bedroom, please. I've been sleeping on your couch for 3 days. 1 more night won't kill me. Before Mason could argue, Catherine appeared with her tablet. The FBI investigators want to meet tonight. They're downstairs in the conference room. Tonight? Serena glanced at the clock. It's almost 9. They're doing us a favor by agreeing to meet at all. Corporate fraud isn't typically their jurisdiction, but the attempted murder and witness intimidation angles got their attention. Catherine looked at Mason. They'll want to interview you too, about the threats against Emma. Fine, but Emma stays up here. Already arranged. Hotel security is posting someone outside your door. Nobody gets in without clearance. Mason checked on Emma. She was already engrossed in a cartoon, then followed Serena and Catherine down to the conference room. 2 FBI agents were waiting. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a younger man who looked barely old enough to shave. Ms. Vale, the woman said, extending her hand. I'm Special Agent Morrison. This is Agent Chen, Set. Serena shook their hands, and Mason saw her slip into CEO mode. Shoulders back, expression neutral, every gesture controlled. Thank you for meeting with us on such short notice. Let's skip the pleasantries, Morrison said, pulling out a chair. We've reviewed the preliminary evidence your attorney provided. It's compelling but incomplete. Walk me through everything. Start with when you first suspected embezzlement. For the next 2 hours, Serena laid out the entire case. The discrepancies she'd noticed in quarterly reports. The shell companies that appeared in transaction records but had no physical address. The executives who'd deflected her questions and undermined her authority. Morrison and Chen took notes, asked pointed questions, and occasionally exchanged glances that Mason couldn't read. When Serena finished, Morrison leaned back. This is good. Better than I expected. But here's the problem. Most of your evidence is circumstantial. The server logs show money moving, but they don't definitively prove where it ended up or who authorized the transfers. I had definitive proof, Serena said. It was destroyed. Yes, so you say. But we can't prosecute based on evidence that no longer exists. Morrison tapped her pen against her notepad. What we can do is open a formal investigation, freeze the assets of the shell companies, interview the executives you've named, apply pressure. Eventually, someone will crack and give us what we need. How long will that take, Millions? Mason asked. Morrison looked at him. Months. Maybe a year. Oh. A year? Mason stood up. These people tried to kill her. They threatened my daughter. And you want us to wait a year while you apply pressure? Mr. Reed. I understand your frustration. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're more interested in building a perfect case than actually protecting people. Mason, Serena said quietly. It's okay. It's not okay. Mason turned to Morrison. What happens tomorrow? After the press conference? When everyone knows Serena's in D.C. cooperating with federal investigators? You think the people who destroyed her evidence are just going to sit back and let that happen? We'll arrange protection. You'll arrange the same kind of protection that let them steal evidence from 3 separate secure locations? The same kind that let them run her off the road and shoot at her car? Mason's voice rose. Forgive me if I'm not feeling particularly confident in your ability to keep her safe. Morrison's expression hardened. Mr. Reed, I appreciate your concern for Ms. Vale, but this is now a federal investigation. We handle these situations every day. We know what we're doing, Charles. Then why do I feel like we're all walking into a trap? The room fell silent. Agent Chen shifted uncomfortably while Morrison stared at Mason with an unreadable expression. He's not wrong, Serena said finally. The people we're dealing with have resources and connections I'm only beginning to understand. They infiltrated my security team. They compromised my attorney's storage facilities. They knew exactly where to find evidence I'd hidden in 3 different states. She looked at Morrison. She looked at, how do we know they haven't already compromised your investigation? Because we haven't told anyone except the people in this room, Morrison said, and we're keeping it that way until we're ready to move. But you're announcing the press conference tomorrow, Mason pointed out, which tells them exactly where Serena will be and when. Morrison and Chen exchanged another look. This one Mason could read. They hadn't thought of that. We'll increase security at the press conference location, Morrison said. Sweep for weapons, control access. It'll be fine. Famous last words, Mason muttered. The meeting ended around 11. Catherine stayed behind to coordinate details with the FBI agents while Mason and Serena rode the elevator back to their floor in tense silence. Thank you, Serena said as they walked down the hallway. for pushing back on them, for not just accepting their timeline. They're bureaucrats. They think in terms of cases and prosecutions, not actual human beings who might get hurt while they're building their perfect evidence chain. You're good at this, cutting through the corporate speak, seeing the real issues underneath. I fix computers for a living. You'd be surprised how similar it is to dealing with people. Everyone's got surface problems and underlying issues. You just have to figure out which one actually matters. They reached their hotel room. The security guard outside verified their identities before letting them in. Emma was asleep in the bedroom, Mr. Trunk clutched to her chest. Mason checked on her, made sure she was covered with the blanket, then returned to find Serena standing by the window looking out at the DC skyline. "I can't sleep," she said. "Every time I close my eyes, I see Emma's face when she asked if the bad people were going to hurt her. And I know it's my fault she's scared. My fault you're both here instead of safe at home." We weren't safe at home. Not after Hutchins showed up. "Russ, you would have been if I'd never gotten in your car." Serena pressed her forehead against the glass. "I keep thinking about that moment, when you stopped, when you could have just kept driving, and I wonder what would have happened if you had. You'd probably be dead." "Maybe. Or maybe I would have figured something else out. Called Catherine from a payphone. Found a different stranger to manipulate into helping me." Her breath fogged the window. "But then I wouldn't have met Emma. Wouldn't have learned to make grilled cheese or draw terrible cats. Wouldn't have had someone dry my hair and remind me what it feels like to be human instead of just a CEO." Mason moved to stand beside her. "Are you saying you regret it? Meeting us?" No. I'm saying I'm terrified that meeting us is going to get you killed." She turned to face him. "Tomorrow at that press conference, I'm going to stand in front of cameras and accuse some of the most powerful people in corporate America of attempted murder and embezzlement. And they're going to come after me with everything they have. Lawyers, media, maybe actual violence. And you and Emma are going to be caught in the crossfire because I was selfish enough to let you help me." "Let me?" Mason caught her hand. "You didn't let me do anything. I chose to help. I chose to bring you home. I chose to put Emma on a plane to DC. Those were my decisions, not yours. Bad decisions. Maybe, but they're mine to make." Mason squeezed her hand. "And for the record, I don't regret any of them. You should. Probably, but I don't, so." They stood by the window, hands linked, and Mason felt the weight of everything that was about to happen pressing down on them. Tomorrow, Serena would step into the spotlight. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. Tomorrow, everything could fall apart. But tonight, they had this moment. "Tell me something," Serena said. "Something true. Something you've never told anyone else." Mason thought about it. "I still talk to Claire sometimes, late at night when Emma's asleep. I tell her about my day, about Emma's accomplishments, about how hard it is to do this alone." He paused. "And sometimes I get angry at her. For dying. For leaving me with this impossible job of being both parents. For making me the one who has to figure everything out without help. That's not crazy. That's grief. Sas." "I know. But it still feels like betrayal. Like I'm not allowed to be angry at someone who died in a car accident through no fault of her own." "You're allowed to feel whatever you feel. That's what you told me, remember? Both is allowed. I'm better at giving advice than taking it. Most people are." Serena was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something true?" "Yeah. I'm terrified of tomorrow, not because of the press conference or the FBI investigation or even the people trying to kill me. I'm terrified because after tomorrow, there's no going back. Everything changes, and I don't know if I'm strong enough to handle what comes next." "You are. How can you possibly know that?" Because you made 17 attempts at drawing a cat before you got one that didn't look like a deformed potato. That kind of stubborn doesn't give up just because things get hard." Serena laughed, but it came out shaky. "The 18th one wasn't much better. Emma liked it. That's what counted. Emma likes everyone. She's aggressively kind. She gets that from her mother." Mason hesitated, then added, "She also has good instincts about people. And she likes you, trusts you. That means something. It means she's 6 and doesn't know better. It means she sees something real in you, something worth trusting. Mason turned Serena to face him. I see it too. So stop trying to convince me you're not worth the trouble. It's not working. I'm really not, though. Worth the trouble. Too late. Already decided. They were standing very close now. Close enough that Mason could count the flecks of gold in Serena's brown eyes. Close enough to see the exact moment her carefully constructed walls started to crumble. This is a really bad idea, Serena whispered. Most of mine are. We barely know each other. We know enough. Tomorrow could be a disaster. Probably will be. Then why? Mason kissed her. It wasn't planned, wasn't strategic. It was just a moment of pure impulse, born from 4 days of watching her try so hard to be strong, and realizing that he didn't want her to be strong alone anymore. He wanted to be the person who stood beside her when everything fell apart, the person who reminded her that being scared was okay, the person who made terrible coffee and dried her hair and told her the truth even when it was hard to hear. Serena froze for half a second, then kissed him back with a desperation that spoke of months, maybe years, of being touch-starved and lonely and pretending everything was fine. Her hands fisted in his shirt while his found her waist, and for just a moment, the corporate fraud and death threats and federal investigations ceased to exist. There was only this, two broken people finding something whole in each other. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Serena looked at him with wide eyes. That was a bad idea, Mason finished. I know. I was going to say unexpected. Also that, we should probably talk about this. Probably. Neither of them moved. I don't do this, Serena said quietly. I don't let people in. I don't let myself want things that aren't related to the company or my father's legacy. I don't... She stopped. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. Haven't exactly dated since Claire died. Haven't wanted to, until now. This is terrible timing. The worst. We're in the middle of a corporate scandal that could end with one or both of us dead. Yep. And you have a 6-year-old daughter who deserves stability, not her father getting involved with a woman whose life is actively falling apart. Also true. So we should stop. Right now. Before this becomes something we can't take back. We should. Mason agreed. He kissed her again. This time Serena didn't hesitate. She kissed him back like she was drowning, and he was air. Like she'd been holding herself together with sheer will for so long that letting go felt like a revelation. They stumbled backward until Serena's back hit the wall, and Mason braced his hands on either side of her head, and somewhere in the back of his mind a voice that sounded like Mrs. Chen was calling him an idiot. He ignored it. When they broke apart this time, Serena was smiling. Actually smiling. Not the practiced CEO smile or the polite stranger smile, but something real and unguarded and almost heartbreaking in its rarity. You're a very bad influence, Mason Reed, she said. You mentioned that before. It bears repeating. Probably. Serena touched his face, her expression turning serious. Tomorrow everything changes, you know that, right? After the press conference, after I go public with everything, we become targets. Real targets. Not just corporate security making vague threats. People who will actually try to hurt us. I know. And you're still here, still choosing this, still choosing me. Yeah, I am. Why? Mason thought about how to answer that, about all the logical reasons he should walk away and all the illogical reasons he couldn't. Finally, he settled on the simplest truth. Because when I look at you, I don't see a billionaire CEO or a corporate scandal or any of the things the media says about you. I see someone who plays with my daughter like every moment matters. Someone who tries 17 times to draw a cat. Someone who cried on my couch because she'd forgotten what it felt like to be treated like a person instead of a brand. He paused. I see someone worth fighting for, and it's been a long time since I felt that way about anyone. Serena's eyes were bright. I don't deserve you, or Emma. I don't deserve any of this. Stop deciding what you deserve and start accepting what you have. Mason stepped back, creating space between them. It's late. We both need sleep. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. I'm not going to be able to sleep. Try anyway. Serena nodded slowly. She started toward the couch, then turned back. Mason, thank you for stopping that night, for all of it. No matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know that these past 4 days have been, she searched for words. They've been the most real thing I've experienced in years, maybe ever. And I'm grateful, even if it all falls apart. It's not going to fall apart. You don't know that. No, but I choose to believe it anyway. What? Mason checked on Emma one more time, then went to his own bedroom. He lay in the unfamiliar hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the kiss over and over in his mind. He'd kissed Serena Vale, the billionaire CEO, currently wanted by corporate assassins, while his daughter slept in the next room and federal investigators prepared to turn her entire life into a media circus. It was possibly the most irresponsible thing he'd done since deciding to become a single father. He smiled anyway. Sometime after 2 a.m., Mason's phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Press conference 10 a.m. Major networks confirmed. FBI security in place. This is happening. Mason stared at the message, then typed back, Serena ready? She will be. Are you? Mason thought about that. Was he ready to watch the woman he was falling for step into a spotlight that would paint a target on her back? Ready to see Emma's face on the news as the single father's daughter caught in corporate scandal? Ready to have his quiet, anonymous life exploded into something public and dangerous? He typed, no, but we're doing it anyway. Catherine responded immediately. Good, get some sleep. Tomorrow we fight. Mason set down his phone and closed his eyes. Through the wall, he could hear Emma's soft breathing and, beyond that, the faint sound of Serena moving around the living room. She couldn't sleep either. He got up and cracked open his door. Serena was sitting on the couch in the dark, her laptop open, reviewing something that cast blue light across her face. Can't sleep? Mason whispered. She looked up. Preparing remarks for tomorrow, making sure I have the story straight. Come here. Mason, come here. Please. Serena closed her laptop and crossed to his doorway. Mason took her hand and pulled her into the bedroom, closing the door quietly behind them. What are you doing? She whispered. Helping you sleep. I don't think... Just sleep. That's all. I promise. Mason gestured to the bed. You take that side. I'll take this side. We both get some rest before tomorrow tries to kill us. This is inappropriate. Probably. We barely know each other. Hey, we know enough. If anyone finds out, nobody's going to find out. It's two people sleeping in the same bed because they're both too stressed and scared to sleep alone. That's it. Serena hesitated, then kicked off her shoes and climbed into the bed, staying carefully on her side. Mason got in on his side, leaving a solid foot of space between them. They lay there in the darkness, both staring at the ceiling, the space between them feeling simultaneously too wide and too narrow. This is weird, Serena whispered. Extremely weird. I haven't shared a bed with anyone since college. I haven't since Claire died. What if Emma wakes up and finds us? Then we explained that sometimes adults need company when they're scared. She'll understand. She sleeps with Mr. Trunk for the same reason. I'm not a stuffed elephant. You're significantly less fuzzy, but the principle holds. Serena laughed quietly. Then, slowly, she shifted closer. Not touching, but close enough that Mason could feel her warmth. Close enough that her breathing started to sync with his. Close enough that when his hand moved across the mattress, her fingers found his and held on. Mason? She whispered. Yeah? Tomorrow, if something goes wrong, if they come after me and things get dangerous, I need you to promise me you'll take Emma and run. Don't try to protect me. Don't try to be a hero. Just get her somewhere safe. I'm not leaving you. Promise me. No. Mason. I said no. We're in this together now. All of us. You, me, Emma. Tomorrow we face whatever comes. Together. He squeezed her hand. No running. No abandoning each other. We finished this. Serena was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, okay. Together. She shifted closer still, and Mason felt her head rest against his shoulder. Her breathing gradually slowed. Within minutes, she was asleep. Mason lay awake longer, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of her trust in every exhale. Tomorrow they'd face cameras and questions and probably more threats. Tomorrow the people who'd tried to kill her would realize she was still fighting. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, Serena Vale, billionaire CEO, corporate target, stubborn disaster of a woman who couldn't cook to save her life, was asleep in his arms, finally at peace. And that felt like a victory all its own. Mason woke to sunlight streaming through hotel curtains and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, he forgot where he was. Then he felt the empty space beside him where Serena had been sleeping and reality crashed back. He found her in the living room, already dressed in a sharp navy suit that Catherine must have brought. Her hair was pulled back, makeup perfect, every inch the polished CEO the world expected. Except her hands were shaking as she held her coffee mug. "You're up early," Mason said. Serena turned. "Couldn't sleep after 5, too much adrenaline." She gestured to the kitchenette where a second cup waited. "I made coffee. It's terrible, but it's caffeine." Mason took the cup and sat beside her on the couch. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified, nauseous, ready to throw up or pass out, or both." She set down her mug. Catherine sent over the final remarks. "I've read them 40 times. I still don't think they're right. What's wrong with them? They're too polished, too corporate. They sound like something a lawyer wrote to minimize liability instead of something a human being would actually say." Serena pulled up the document on her tablet and handed it to Mason. "Read it. Tell me I'm wrong." Mason scanned the prepared statement. Catherine had done exactly what lawyers do, removed every ounce of emotion, every personal detail, every trace of the actual human cost of what had happened. It was technically accurate, legally sound, and completely bloodless. "You're not wrong," Mason said. "This sounds like a press release, not a person." Or me, some. That's what I told Catherine. She said emotion makes me look unstable, that I need to appear calm and in control if I want the media to take me seriously. The media already thinks you're an ice queen. Maybe showing them you're human would be revolutionary. Serena took back the tablet and stared at the statement. "If I go off script, Catherine will have a heart attack. The FBI will probably disown the whole investigation, and I'll be completely on my own up there." "You've been on your own this whole time. At least this way you're on your own telling the truth." Before Serena could respond, Emma's door opened and she emerged in her pajamas, dragging Mr. Trunk behind her. "Is it time for breakfast?" "It's time for whatever you want, sweetheart," Mason said. "What sounds good?" "Pancakes!" Then Emma saw Serena in her suit and her face fell. "Are you leaving?" "Not leaving," Serena said quickly. "Just going to work for a little while. I'll be back." "Do you have to go to work? I thought we were all on an adventure together." "We are, but I have something important I need to do first." Serena knelt down to Emma's level. "Remember how we talked about brave people? How they do the right thing even when they're scared?" Emma nodded. "I have to be brave today. I have to tell some very powerful people that they did something wrong. And it's going to be scary, but it's the right thing to do." Like when I told Mrs. Patterson that Marcus was cheating on the spelling test, even though he's my best friend? Exactly like that, except with more cameras and fewer spelling tests. Emma hugged Serena tightly. "You can do it, Miss Vale. I know you can." Serena's eyes went bright. She hugged Emma back and looked at Mason over his daughter's shoulder with an expression that said she was barely holding herself together. Catherine arrived at 8:30 with a full security detail. She took one look at Serena and said, "You're not wearing that suit." "What's wrong with this suit?" "It's navy. Navy reads as corporate and distant on camera. You need something warmer, more approachable." Catherine pulled out a garment bag. "I brought options. Go change." While Serena disappeared into the bedroom, Catherine turned to Mason. "You and Emma are staying here. Hotel security, plus 2 FBI agents posted outside. Nobody gets in or out without clearance." "What if something goes wrong at the press conference?" Mason asked. "Then the security team evacuates Serena to a safe location, and you stay put until we give the all clear." Catherine's expression was firm. "I know you want to be there, but the best way you can help her right now is to keep Emma safe and out of the spotlight." The media would eat that story alive. Billionaire CEO's secret single dad boyfriend and his adorable daughter. "Is that what you want?" "No," Mason admitted. "Then trust me. Trust the security team. And let Serena do what she needs to do." Serena emerged wearing a burgundy blouse and gray slacks that somehow made her look both professional and human. Catherine nodded approval, then started briefing her on logistics while Mason made pancakes for Emma. "Daddy?" Emma whispered while they ate. "Is Miss Vale going to be okay?" "I hope so, sweetheart. Are the bad people going to try to hurt her?" "I don't know, but she has a lot of good people protecting her." Mason squeezed Emma's hand. "And we're going to wait right here until she comes back. Deal?" "Deal. Can we watch cartoons while we wait?" "You can watch whatever you want." At 9:30, Catherine and her security team escorted Serena out. Mason walked her to the door, acutely aware of Emma watching from the couch and the FBI agents pretending not to notice anything. "Thank you," Serena said quietly. "For last night, for this morning, for everything. Just come back safe." "I will." She hesitated, then stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. "Take care of Emma. Always." Mason watched her disappear into the elevator, surrounded by security personnel, who all looked like they could bench press a truck. Then he closed the door and tried to ignore the knot of dread in his stomach. The press conference was being broadcast live on every major network. Mason turned on the television at 10 a.m. and immediately regretted it. Emma was engrossed in her cartoons in the bedroom, which meant she wouldn't see her father's stress-eating hotel muffins while watching the woman he was falling for walk into a potential disaster. The venue was a large conference room at a downtown hotel. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters filled every seat, notebooks ready, expressions hungry for a story. And at the front, behind a podium bearing the FBI seal, stood Serena. She looked smaller on television, more vulnerable. The burgundy blouse that had looked warm and approachable in person now looked like someone trying too hard. Mason's hands clenched into fists. An FBI spokesperson stepped up first, giving a brief statement about the ongoing investigation into corporate fraud at Vale Technologies. Then it was Serena's turn. She approached the podium and adjusted the microphone. For a long moment, she just stood there, looking out at the sea of reporters. Mason could see her hands gripping the podium edges. "Good morning," Serena began. Her voice was steady, controlled. "My name is Serena Vale, and I'm the CEO of Vale Technologies. 6 months ago, I discovered evidence that 3 senior executives in my company had been embezzling funds for years. When I confronted them, they tried to destroy me. Last week, they tried to kill me." The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Catherine stood off to the side looking like she'd just swallowed glass. Serena raised her hand for silence. "I'm not taking questions yet. I need you to hear the whole story first." She pulled out a piece of paper, the prepared statement Catherine had written, and set it on the podium. Then she pushed it aside. "That's what my attorney wanted me to say," Serena told the room. "It's very polished, very professional, very legally sound, and it's also completely dishonest about what this has actually been like." Mason sat forward on the hotel couch. "The truth is," Serena continued, "I'm standing here today because a stranger pulled over during a rainstorm and helped me when he had every reason to keep driving. I'm here because a single father with his own problems decided my life was worth saving even though I was nothing to him. I'm here because a 6-year-old girl reminded me what it means to be kind without expecting anything in return." The reporters had gone quiet, actually listening. "For years, I built my entire identity around being Serena Vale's CEO. I thought if I was smart enough, ruthless enough, successful enough, I could prove that I deserved my father's company, that I was more than just an heiress who inherited everything. And somewhere along the way, I forgot how to be a person. I forgot that companies are made of people, that numbers on spreadsheets represent real employees with real families, that leadership isn't about being untouchable. It's about being trustworthy." Mason felt something tighten in his chest. The people who tried to destroy me didn't just steal money. They stole my father's legacy. They betrayed the trust of 3,000 employees who depend on Vale Technologies for their livelihoods. And when I tried to stop them, they went after the one person in my life who actually saw me as human instead of a target or a trophy. Serena's voice cracked slightly. "They threatened a 6-year-old child because they thought it would scare me into silence." The room was absolutely silent now. "So here's what I'm going to do," Serena said. "I'm going to cooperate fully with the FBI investigation. I'm going to testify against every person who participated in this fraud. And I'm going to rebuild Vale Technologies from the ground up with one simple principle. People matter more than profit. Employees matter more than stock prices. Integrity matters more than quarterly earnings. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. But more importantly, I'm going to stop being the person who thinks she has to handle everything alone. I'm going to accept help when it's offered. I'm going to trust people who've earned that trust. And I'm going to stop pretending that being strong means being isolated. Mason realized he was crying. Actually crying. Watching this woman who'd burned pancakes in his kitchen 5 days ago stand in front of the entire country and choose vulnerability over corporate armor. My father built Veil Technologies believing that innovation could change the world, Serena said. I'm going to honor that belief, not by being the perfect CEO who never makes mistakes, but by being human enough to admit when I'm wrong, brave enough to fight when I'm scared, and humble enough to accept that I need help. She stepped back from the podium. Now I'll take questions. The room exploded again. Every reporter shouted at once, hands raised, voices overlapping. Serena pointed to someone in the front row. Ms. Vale, can you name the executives involved in the embezzlement? I've provided those names to federal investigators. I won't comment publicly until they've completed their inquiry. Is it true your head of security tried to run you off the road? Yes. I have documentation and witness testimony to support that claim. Who helped you after the accident? You mentioned a single father. I'm not identifying him publicly. He and his daughter have already been threatened by corporate security personnel from my own company. I won't put them at further risk by making them part of this media circus. Another reporter. What do you say to critics who claim this is just a publicity stunt to distract from your own financial mismanagement? Serena's expression hardened. I'd say show me the evidence. I've been transparent about everything I've discovered. If someone has proof that I've mismanaged company funds, I welcome them to present it. Otherwise, stop repeating accusations that have no basis in fact. Are you stepping down as CEO? Absolutely not. I built this company alongside my father. I'm not abandoning it because corrupt executives tried to steal it out from under me. The questions continued for 40 minutes. Serena answered every single one with a combination of honesty and steel that made Mason fall a little more in love with her every time she spoke. She admitted mistakes. She defended her decisions. She refused to throw innocent people under the bus while naming exactly the guilty parties she could legally identify. Finally, Catherine stepped up and announced that was all the time they had. Serena thanked the press and left the podium. The news networks immediately cut to their anchors for analysis. Mason turned off the television and sat in stunned silence. His phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. She did great. Coming back to hotel now. ETA 30 minutes. Mason checked on Emma, still watching cartoons, oblivious to the fact that the woman she'd been teaching to draw cats had just become national news. He made more coffee and tried to process what he'd just witnessed. Serena had done it. She'd stood in front of the world and told the truth. Not the polished corporate version, the real, messy, human truth. And she'd done it without compromising her integrity or throwing anyone under the bus who didn't deserve it. The hotel room door opened and Serena walked in, followed by Catherine and 2 security guards who posted up outside. Serena looked exhausted. Her perfect makeup was smudged. Her hair had come loose from its pins. She was the most beautiful thing Mason had ever seen. How bad was it? Serena asked. Mason crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. You were perfect. I went completely off script. Catherine's probably going to fire me as a client. I'm absolutely firing you, Catherine confirmed from the doorway. But first I'm opening a bottle of wine and toasting the best press conference disaster I've ever witnessed. Miss Vale! Emma came running from the bedroom and launched herself at Serena. You're back! Serena caught her and held tight. I'm back. Did you watch cartoons? So many cartoons. Daddy let me watch whatever I wanted because he was worried about you. Emma, Mason warned. Well, you were. You kept checking your phone and pacing and eating all the muffins, Catherine laughed. I'll give you all some privacy. Security stays outside. Call if you need anything. She paused at the door. Serena, you did good today. Really good. I'm not actually firing you. After Catherine left, Mason made Emma lunch while Serena changed out of her press conference clothes into jeans and a sweater. When she emerged, She looked more like the woman who'd slept on his couch than the CEO who'd just faced down corporate corruption on national television. What happens now? Mason asked. Now we wait. The FBI investigates. The media picks apart everything I said. The board of directors probably tries to force me out. And somewhere in all of that, we figure out how to live our lives. That's not much of a plan. I'm learning to be okay with that. Serena sat at the kitchen table while Emma colored. Catherine thinks the press conference bought us time. The media scrutiny makes it harder for Hutchins and his people to come after us directly. And the FBI is fast-tracking the investigation now that it's public. How long until they have enough to prosecute? Weeks, maybe months. Catherine's investigative team found more evidence this morning, transaction records that the embezzlers thought they'd deleted. It's enough to build a case, but not enough to convict. Not yet. Mason sat across from her. So what do? Stay in hiding? Go back to Chicago and hope they don't try again? Catherine suggested witness protection, new identities, relocation. That's not happening. I told her the same thing. Serena watched Emma color. I'm not running anymore. And I'm not asking you and Emma to give up your lives because of my problems. Our problems, Mason corrected. We're in this together, remember? Emma looked up from her coloring. Are we staying in the hotel forever? Because I like the big TV, but I miss Mrs. Chen and Mr. Peterson and my school. We're not staying forever, Mason promised. Just until it's safe to go home. When will it be safe? Soon, sweetheart. But Mason didn't know if that was true. He looked at Serena and saw the same uncertainty in her eyes. Over the next 3 days, the media storm intensified. Serena's press conference had gone viral. News outlets dissected every word. Social media exploded with opinions. Some people praised her courage. Others accused her of orchestrating a publicity stunt. A few particularly vicious commentators questioned her mental stability and suggested she was too emotional to run a major corporation. Mason watched it all from the hotel room, while Serena met with FBI investigators, Catherine, and a parade of lawyers and accountants trying to untangle the web of fraud. She came back each night exhausted, ordered room service with Emma, and fell asleep on the couch while Mason's daughter told her elaborate stories about school friends and stuffed animals. On the 4th day, Catherine arrived with news. They found it, she said without preamble. The money, all of it, traced through 12 different shell companies to offshore accounts controlled by the 3 executives you identified, plus 2 board members we didn't know were involved. Serena stood up so fast she knocked over her coffee. Are you serious? Dead serious. The FBI is executing arrest warrants as we speak, and they want you to fly back to Chicago tomorrow to give a formal deposition. Chicago? Is it safe? Safer than it was a week ago. With 5 executives in federal custody and the entire investigation public, nobody's going to risk coming after you now. Catherine pulled out her tablet. There's something else. The board voted this morning. Emergency session. They're removing the 2 compromised members and issuing a formal apology to you. They want you back as CEO. Serena sat down hard. They want me back. With full authority. No oversight committee, no restrictions. They're basically giving you carte blanche to rebuild the company however you see fit. Mason watched Serena process this. Victory. Complete and total victory. Everything she'd been fighting for. Her father's company restored. Her reputation vindicated. The people who'd betrayed her facing prison time. She should have looked happy. Instead, she looked terrified. I need to think about it, Serena said quietly. Catherine blinked. Think about what? This is everything you wanted. I know, I need time to think. After Catherine left, Mason found Serena standing by the window, staring out at the DC skyline like it held answers she couldn't find. Talk to me, Mason said. They're offering me everything I thought I wanted. Control of the company, vindication, justice. Serena pressed her forehead against the glass. And all I can think about is Emma asking when we can go home. About Mrs. Chen and her terrible homemade soup. About your cramped apartment with the broken elevator and the terrible coffee. You hate my coffee. Bushim. I know, but I miss it anyway. She turned to face him. For years, I thought success meant being the perfect CEO, never showing weakness, never admitting mistakes, building an empire that would make my father proud. And I did it. I built exactly what I set out to build, and it made me miserable. What do you want instead? I want to make grilled cheese without burning it. I want to draw terrible cats with Emma. I want to wake up next to someone who sees me as a person instead of a stock price. Her voice cracked. I want a life that feels real instead of just successful. Mason crossed to her and took her hands. Then build that life. You don't have to choose between being CEO and being human. You can be both. Can I? Because it feels like every time I try to be both, something breaks. That's because you're trying to do it alone. Stop trying to do everything alone. Serena laughed, but it came out shaky. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's possible. Mason squeezed her hands. Look, I don't know anything about running a billion-dollar company, but I know what it's like to rebuild a life after everything falls apart. After Claire died, I had to figure out how to be a single father while grieving my wife, while keeping a business running, while making sure Emma didn't grow up feeling like she'd lost both parents. And you know what saved me? What? Accepting help. Letting Mrs. Chen watch Emma when I couldn't. Letting clients pay late when money was tight. Letting Emma see me cry sometimes instead of pretending I had everything together. Whoa, Mason touched her face. You spent 5 days in my apartment learning that it's okay to be imperfect. Don't forget that lesson the second you put your CEO suit back on. Serena leaned into his touch. Come back to Chicago with me, you and Emma. Not to the penthouse or the corporate offices, just stay. Help me figure out how to do this. How to be both the person I need to be for Vail Technologies and the person I want to be for myself. Are you asking me to move in with you? I'm asking you to give this a chance. Give us a chance. See if what we found in those 5 days can survive in the real world. Mason thought about his cramped apartment, his barely scraping by existence, his careful, quiet life that had felt safe precisely because it demanded nothing more than survival. Then he thought about Serena burning pancakes while Emma supervised, about drying her hair while she remembered her father, about the way she'd kissed him like he was the first real thing she'd touched in years. Okay, Mason said, we'll try. They flew back to Chicago the next morning. Catherine had arranged for a car to take them directly from the private airfield to Serena's penthouse, a sprawling space in a luxury high-rise that made Mason's apartment look like a storage closet. Emma walked through the massive living room with wide eyes. Miss Vail, is this all yours? Yes? Do you like it? It's really big and really clean and really... Emma searched for a word. Empty. Serena looked around like she was seeing her home for the first time. You're right, it is empty. Over the next weeks, that started to change. Emma's drawings appeared on the refrigerator. Mason's terrible coffee maker found a place in the state-of-the-art kitchen. Mr. Trunk claimed a spot on the guest bedroom bed. And slowly, the pristine penthouse that had always looked like a hotel suite started to look like a place where actual humans lived. Vail. Technologies underwent its own transformation. Serena fired 12 executives who'd either participated in the fraud or enabled it through willful ignorance. She restructured the entire financial oversight system. She implemented new transparency measures and employee protections. And she did it all while making sure she was home for dinner with Mason and Emma at least 4 nights a week. It wasn't smooth. There were arguments. Mason hated the way Serena's board members talked down to her. Serena hated how Mason's clients took advantage of his kindness. Emma hated that adults couldn't just decide to be happy without making everything complicated. But they worked through it, together. 6 months after the press conference, the trial began. Mason sat in the courtroom gallery every day, watching Serena testify against the people who'd tried to destroy her. She was calm, factual, devastating. The jury convicted all 5 executives on multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. The day the verdict came in, Mason took Serena and Emma to the small Italian restaurant where he and Claire used to go for their anniversary. It wasn't fancy. The tables were cramped and the wine list was limited, and the owner's grandmother still made the pasta by hand in the back kitchen. This is perfect, Serena said, looking around at the checkered tablecloths and the photos of old Chicago on the walls. It's not much, Mason said. It's real. That makes it perfect. They ate terrible breadsticks and overcooked pasta while Emma told them about her science project on butterflies, the same one she'd wanted to show Serena 8 months ago. Serena listened like every word mattered, asking questions and offering suggestions, and Mason watched the two most important people in his life bond over monarch migration patterns. After dinner, walking back to Serena's building, Emma grabbed both their hands. "Are you going to marry Daddy?" she asked Serena. Serena nearly tripped. "Emma!" "What?" "It's a reasonable question. You live together. You kiss when you think I'm not looking. You make each other happy. That's what people who get married do." Mason felt his face heat. "Sweetheart, that's a private conversation. I'm just saying it would be nice to make it official, so I can tell people at school that Miss Vale is my mom, not my dead mom, but my now mom, the one who helps with homework and still can't make pancakes without burning them." Serena stopped walking. She knelt down to Emma's level. "Emma, I could never replace your mother, and I wouldn't want to try. She was special and important, and she loved you very much. I know, but she's gone, and you're here. And you love me too, right?" "Yes, I love you very much." "And you love Daddy?" Serena looked up at Mason. "Yes, I love him too." "Then marry him, please, because I really like living in the big apartment with the good TV, and I don't want you to change your mind and make us leave." Mason laughed despite himself. "That's very practical of you." "Mrs. Chen says I'm practical like you." Emma stood up. "So will you marry him?" "Emma, that's not how proposals work." "Why not? You're the CEO. You make decisions all the time. Just decide." Emma crossed her arms. "Unless you're scared. But you said brave people do the right thing even when they're scared. So be brave." Serena stood slowly. She looked at Mason with an expression that was equal parts terrified and hopeful. "Your daughter makes a compelling argument. She gets that from her mother," Mason said. "The being right about things, it's extremely annoying. So what do you think? Should I be brave?" Mason thought about the rainy night 8 months ago when he'd pulled over for a stranger, about burnt pancakes and terrible drawings and federal investigations, about learning that love didn't have to be safe to be worth it. "Yeah," Mason said. "Be brave." Serena pulled a small box from her jacket pocket. "I was planning to do this differently, somewhere romantic, with speeches and planning and, you know what? Emma's right. I'm overthinking this." She opened the box. Inside were 2 rings, a simple band for Mason, and a smaller one clearly meant for a child. "I had these made 3 weeks ago," Serena admitted. "I've been carrying them around waiting for the perfect moment, but I'm learning that perfect moments don't exist. There are just real moments, and this one feels pretty real." She looked at Mason. "I know we've only been doing this for 6 months. I know it's fast and imperfect and probably a terrible idea by every logical standard. But you taught me that logic isn't everything, that sometimes you just have to trust what feels right." She took a breath. "You feel right, you and Emma. This strange little family we've accidentally built. It feels right. So, will you marry me? Both of you?" Mason looked at his daughter, who was practically vibrating with excitement, then at Serena, who was holding her breath like her entire world depended on his answer. He took the ring. "Yeah, we'll marry you." Emma whooped and threw her arms around both of them. Serena laughed and cried at the same time, and Mason felt something in his chest that he hadn't felt since before Claire died. Hope. Real, terrifying, beautiful hope. They got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the same courthouse where they'd testified against corrupt executives. Mrs. Chen was there, along with Catherine and a handful of people from Vale Technologies who'd supported Serena through everything. Emma was the flower girl and took her responsibilities so seriously that she counted every single petal to make sure they were evenly distributed. The media tried to make it into a spectacle. Billionaire CEO marries single dad. She met during corporate scandal, but Serena and Mason ignored them. This wasn't a story for public consumption. This was their life. They bought a house. Not a mansion, not a penthouse. Just a normal house in a good school district with a backyard where Emma could play, and a kitchen where Serena could continue her quest to make edible pancakes. Mason kept his computer repair business, though now he could afford to turn away clients who didn't pay on time. Serena kept running Vale Technologies, but with new boundaries that protected her time with her family. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments about work-life balance and whose turn it was to help with homework, and whether Emma really needed a dog. There were hard days when the weight of everything that had happened threatened to crush them. Days when Mason missed Claire so much it physically hurt. Days when Serena wanted to quit everything and run away to a place where nobody knew her name, but they worked through it, together, because that's what family does. On their first anniversary, Serena woke Mason up at 6 in the morning. "I made pancakes," she announced proudly. Mason sat up and smelled smoke. "Are they edible?" "Mostly, only 2 burned. The other 4 are acceptable." That's a 70% success rate, new record. They ate slightly burnt pancakes while Emma slept in, and Mason thought about how far they'd come. From a crashed car on a rainy street to a kitchen table covered in syrup and laughter. "Thank you," Serena said quietly. "For what?" "For stopping that night. For not giving up on me when things got hard. For teaching me that being successful and being happy aren't mutually exclusive." She reached across the table and took his hand. "For showing me what home feels like." Mason squeezed her hand. "Thank you for burning my pancakes and threatening to destroy my peace, and making me remember that life is supposed to be more than just survival." Was that romantic? I can't tell if that was romantic. It was perfect. Emma shuffled into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, and climbed into Serena's lap without asking. Serena wrapped her arms around Mason's daughter, their daughter, and kissed the top of her head. And Mason realized something he'd been trying to articulate for months. Love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose imperfections fit with yours in a way that makes both of you better. It's about choosing every day to show up, mess up, figure it out, and try again tomorrow. It's about pulling over in the rain for a stranger who needs help, even when every logical reason says keep driving. Sometimes the best decisions we make are the ones that look like mistakes from the outside. The impulsive ones. The reckless ones. The ones that don't make sense on paper but feel right in our bones. Mason had stopped his car in a rainstorm for a bleeding stranger, and in return, he'd gotten a family. Not a perfect family. Not an easy family, but a real one. The kind built on burnt pancakes and terrible drawings, and choosing each other every single day, despite all the reasons they shouldn't. Years later, when Emma was older and asked how he'd known Serena was the one, Mason would think back to that first morning in his apartment, to Serena standing over a smoking pan, completely defeated by breakfast food, looking at him like he might have the answer. He hadn't known then. Not really. But he'd chosen to find out. And that choice, that single moment of saying yes to uncertainty and mess and possibility, had changed everything. "Daddy?" Emma's voice pulled him back to the present. "You're smiling at your coffee again." "Sorry, sweetheart. It's okay. Mom says you do that when you're thinking about mushy stuff." Serena laughed. "I said romantic stuff, not mushy." "Same thing, Sham." Mason looked at his wife and daughter arguing about vocabulary over burnt pancakes, and he thought about how love works, how it shows up in unexpected places, how it asks impossible things of us, how it breaks us open and puts us back together into shapes we never expected. Most people walk past the broken things in life, the crashed cars, the bleeding strangers, the risks that don't make sense. But sometimes, just sometimes, stopping to help changes everything. Not because the stranger turns out to be a billionaire, not because there's some grand reward waiting, but because choosing compassion over convenience, connection over comfort, love over logic. That's what makes us human. That's what makes life worth living. And that's a lesson worth remembering. Whether you're a single father fixing computers in Chicago, or a CEO rebuilding an empire, or just a person trying to figure out how to be brave when everything feels impossible. Stop for the stranger. Burn the pancakes. Choose love even when it's terrifying, because the best things in life are rarely the safe ones. They're the ones that make your hands shake and your heart race and your logical brain scream that this is a terrible idea. And then they become home.